If we go up further on corridor on the Green Pond Road, near School Road, we have Hibernia Auto Restoration in this I district over here. And we have, I believe, a Hibernia restaurant is located in this area, as well as Hibernia Firehouse. Here we have the intersection of Green Pond Road and Telemark Road. Here we have Norway Field, and Telemark Pizza, I believe, is over here, and Telemark Auto Restoration is over there. Corridor 12 is even further up Green Pond Road near the intersection of Timberbrook Road. And then finally, we have a small B1 corridor at the very tip top of the township near the intersection of Green Pond Road and Jacobs Road. Now, very briefly, if the township does want to look at a rezoning, there are certain legal requirements that go behind that. This is the typical ordinance adoption process. Typically, what would happen first is that the council would direct the preparation of an ordinance. That ordinance would be introduced at a council hearing. After that, the ordinance would be referred to the planning board for a consistency determination, which is required by statute. Essentially, what that consistency determination entails is the planning board looking at whatever the ordinance is and making sure that it's not inconsistent with our master plan. If the planning board is okay with everything, they refer it back to the council, and then the ordinance is voted upon and public notice is provided. Now, the issue of public notice, that's relegated by NJSA 40:55D-62.1, which is a mouthful, but essentially what that says is that we must provide notice to all real property owners located either, one, in the case of a classification change, so for changing what's going on in a zone, within the district and within the state within 200 feet in all directions. So if you're a property owner within one of those three districts or within 200 feet of one of those districts, you get notice. It's very similar to if there's a, if your neighbor has a fence application that requires a variance and you're within 200 feet, oftentimes you'll get notice for that as well. Or if it's the case of a boundary change, you notice real property owners within the state within 200 feet of all directions of that change. So what I did very roughly, for lack of a better word, is using our GIS system, estimated how many real property owners are located within the B1, the B2, in the I districts, and within 200 feet of those districts. And this would have to be confirmed by the township tax assessor through a certain process, but we estimated it would be about 1,010 parcels.
And Dave, that includes other towns as well. That would be also within the 200 feet of a parcel that is a B1, B2, and industrial zone as well.
100% correct. Yeah, because you're looking at over here in Wharton, over here near the borough, these areas, I believe that's Wharton as well, Dover, Green Pond, yeah. So there are a bunch of areas that would, outside of the township, that would also have to be notified. And then there's also a notice requirement for the Office of Planning Advocacy and any registered military facility commander. So what I wanted to do with that presentation is just to provide a background of what this request is, what it's for, what we have previously done, and where these zones are located, and what the process is like. So I'm here to entertain any questions, any comments, concerns, so on and so forth. I'm all yours.
Does anybody on the council now have any questions for Mr. Novak with regard to his presentation? First of all, thank you very much for that.
And we can certainly make this available via PDF as well.
Yeah, and then I know that we're not going to have a question session with the public with you here, but they have the right to, during the open public portion, or they can also send an email
Absolutely.
to you or to the planning department or whatever the case may be, if they have any questions that they want to follow up for.
Absolutely, and I usually am here one day a week, either Tuesday or Thursday, so if you have any questions on this, or if you want to put up a fence or anything like that, I'm here.
Council President.
Councilman Junior?
About how many parcels do we have throughout the entire town?
I would say roughly around 10 to 12,000, as just a guess.
Yeah, 10,000 is what I remember. So the number of parcels that need to be notified.
Residential, though, by the way. 10,000 residential.
10,000, I believe it's 10,000 residential parcels, and when you add the other ones, I think it's around 12 to 14.
So we're looking to about 8 or 10% of the town that needs to be notified.
8.5%.
Can you go back to the slide, summary of previously drafted ordinance?
Sure.
I think it's the 5th slide. actually the next slide.
Oh, sorry, the previously ordered? I'm sorry. I thought you meant the previous efforts.
So we received a copy with the presentation. We received a copy separately as well. I think they're the same. They're both labeled 17-12. The last section there, established conditions and regulations for. If I remember correctly, the property owners whose attorneys appeared on your timeline at the October adoption meeting where the adoption was to take place, I believe their concerns were in that section.
There were
Expressed concerns. Does that sound correct?
I honestly don't recall exactly what their concerns were regarding those regulations. I don't remember what they were off the top of my head.
I had it, so I actually raised some of those that are on there.
Mm-hmm.
On the portion of the ordinance that you have, it would be under section 3, 13. So it's going to be on page 3 of the ordinance 17-12.
One moment. Sorry, I'm with you now. Page 3?
Yeah, page 3 would be number 13.
Prohibited activities and uses.
It is. Now, since there's a lot, just in that corridor alone, I don't have the whole demographic of all the areas in Rockaway Township. But when you have A, B, C, D, and E, I don't think it's really much of an issue. But some of the establishments that are on there, you have that potentially could be affected, would be Bob Henry's gas station. I believe that's 171 Green Pond Road. It used to be Norseman Automotive. It's the last fueling station on Green Pond before Meriden. And then going up, you have Telemark Auto. And then following that, you would have Marcella Garage. And then after that, you would have Viking Auto, potentially Rich Kimball. There's also R&D Automotive that is right on the flats there on Green Pond, not that far from the area that this is potentially being reviewed. If they already have, like B, for instance, the storage of cars, trucks, trailers, boats, and any other vehicles not being serviced, well, there are repair stations that would have this type of activity. And now, with this ordinance that you're bringing forward, you're making it prohibited. So, would that then have to file for a pre-existing nonconformity after the year, or within that year frame, the change of this ordinance that potentially affects them? That's a huge concern, only that one section that's being drafted here.
I can address that one first. Yeah. And you're right, they could apply for a certificate of nonconformity from the zoning officer. Quite frankly, when I had written the prohibited activities and uses section, I had the idea was for that to apply to automotive fueling station convenience stores. So that would be something that we would have to correct in this ordinance and make sure that those prohibited activities are really for if it's a Quick Check or a Wawa or some sort of gasoline service station convenience store. So that way, if it is just an automotive fueling station or a service station, it would still be able to have those uses on site.
Yeah, because, some of the individuals, they may get a notice, they may not even realize it.
Exactly.
Their time has expired, it may be time barred and something like that, and I just think it would be unjust for those to be somewhat subjected to that, unknowingly.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%.
Yeah, it's just, that was one thing that I had that was going on there. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if anybody else, I just wanted to continue unless you had something else.
Yeah, just from a continuity perspective, I just wanted to point out that I believe that most of the issues that were expressed that we were aware of publicly fell into that last section on that slide. Also from a continuity perspective, following this ordinance being voted on by the previous council and being voted against with the advice of then Business Administrator Mr. Brewer, one of the issues of the need of an ordinance like this, or revisions, had to do with the very outdated, antiquated ordinances with regard to land use. Of course, in Rockaway, all the ordinances are outdated and antiquated, but specifically with regard to land use. So that projects like this, whether or not this project the Wawa project. Whether or not the Wawa project is a good project is really irrelevant to this conversation. The problem is that the township can't even consider projects like this because the code, as it currently stands in its antiquated form, doesn't even allow that consideration. So because we can't even consider it, we are potentially losing ratables and projects to other towns, and the town is less competitive as a result. The conversation started anew last spring with the new council. In July, we had a presentation by the specific property owner or representative of the property owner for Wawa, and that was the last meeting that this council had with Mayor Datchison. At the conclusion of that meeting, Mayor Datchison and I, as council president at the time, agreed that the council and the administration would form a joint committee of members of both to review this ordinance, review the issues with it, and see if there's a path forward that would not result in legal exposure to the town. That was brought up, I believe, the meeting before Mr. Puzio became mayor. I had referenced it then and reached out publicly from this dais to Mr. Puzio to establish that committee with the council so we could pursue this. That did not happen during my tenure as council president. I don't know if Council President Kelly, if the administration has reached out to you to establish that committee, but we had all agreed in this room publicly that that was the next step, that we needed to all get in a room, dig through the details to understand what the problems were, not draft an ordinance that was tailored to one property owner, which might not be appropriate, right, that would result in additional legal exposure, but to draft something that would modernize our land use code so that our town could be competitive with neighboring towns to be able to at least consider projects and then determine whether or not those projects work for Rockaway or not. Thank you.
You know what, on that topic, I'm going to try to make it pretty quick.
Sure.
Though it's important, I don't want to rush either. But a couple of things. When we had this presented, I was a member of the public at the time watching that go on, and one of the attorneys, Mr. Hammond, had come up. In that area there, between the Shell station, we had Dunkin' Donuts, the Rockaway Hotel, we also had the Exxon, and all these applications that had come there that had been denied. And of course, the potential of the threatening suits of moving forward with this, of the objectors of this potential move to amend or modify this ordinance here. There is that potential. If we do that, that could be affected, and if it's just those two individuals, it could be more based on the 1,000-plus notice that we'd have to make of the 200-foot property owners. The other question is, if we're doing 1,010 notices, do we consume that cost, or is there a potentiality that the requester of this change, is there some type of a legal remedy where they would then be liable for those costs so it wouldn't affect the township?
Okay. In regard to the first question, excuse me as I look for my municipal land use law.
It's somebody who don't know.
Is that me? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So, in regards to the first question, in terms of essentially legal exposure, with 1,010 parcels, that's absolutely a possibility. If the council wanted to go forward with an ordinance like this, typically what I would recommend we do is some sort of land use plan amendment. So, if we were to do a land use plan amendment, so amend our master plan and how we envision development, that'll make whatever ordinance we adopt, if the township were to choose to adopt such an ordinance, it would ensure that there would be consistency between our development regulations and what we're envisioning through this master plan process, which is essentially a community process. Is that going to stop anybody from filing a lawsuit? No. But it at least gives the township a little more of a legal backing. In regards to the second question, it's a little bit more of a legal question, so I'll defer to township attorney for that, but the municipal land use law does state regarding notice that the, quote, the cost of the notice provision shall be the responsibility of the proponent of the amendment. the reason I defer to attorneys is because oftentimes
4055D what?
40 colon. I got a couple letters too. I believe it's 40 colon 55 D-62.1 in that section. I'll defer to the township attorney on that one. I know that usually the concern is people are worried that it looks like an applicant is buying zoning through that.
That is the other concern. And the last thing is that, in Dover, on the corner of South Salem Street and Blackwell Street, they already have an approval of a Wawa that's going there. And having the resolution from Dover, from what they did as far as the relief that they sought out as far as the applicant goes versus this, what would be more beneficiary for the township is drafting a completely different ordinance that almost tailors one applicant looking like a spot zone and paying off for this versus the Dover situation. They went for multiple variances and use variances to get those approvals from the members of the board based on testimony and documentation of burden of proofs. So the one thing is that if we do this, we could potentially get sued by multiple businesses that potentially be affected, and we already know that's a good possibility in the area from when they came and were vocal on that meeting in 2017. Where in the other case, if they were to go for a use variance or multiple use variances, then they would be subject of the appeal process going in there. I think it minimizes litigation doing it one way than the other. Because you could do the zone change and then we do it, and then let's say we do make everything to the new ordinance that we're trying to pass now, moving forward, and that could be challenged. And if we're successful in that challenge, then whatever approvals that person gets if they come before the board, then there can also be another
second challenge.
Yeah, so it almost seems like they get, between the two applicants and in two potential appeals, they get almost 4 bites out of an apple. And I was just wondering which way, does the township benefit from going in that direction versus just the applicant? And who are we doing it for? Are we doing it for the master plan and for the township and for the residents and taxpayers? Or are we doing it just for the applicant?
Generally, I would say the general philosophy in planning is to plan through zoning and plan through your master plan. Planning through use variance granting. Use variance are supposed to be granted somewhat sparingly, so it's generally frowned down upon. So if this is something that the township wants, not just at this location, but envisions this type of use in the B1 and the B2 and the I zone, or if it's just the B1, the B2, whatever it is the council chooses to do, I would recommend doing it on a more comprehensive level where we have master planning documents, where we have comprehensive zoning ordinances, rather than going through the use variance process where, for lack of a better word, piecemeal.
And a gamble, too, for them as well.
Absolutely, yes. Because if I'm the objecting attorney to a gas station application anywhere in this township, in the I industrial zone, when it comes time to proving the negative criteria, which is, I'm sorry, my back is going. Part of granting a use variance is an applicant needs to show that there's no substantial detriment to the public good, which is generally all of us, and no substantial impairment to the intent of the zone plan. If I'm an objecting attorney, and this actually happened at one of the other applications, the objecting attorney, all they need to say is, well, you know what, the council had an opportunity to pass this ordinance back in 2017. Yes, it might have been denied because of notice issues at the time, predominantly, but there's been no action to take that rezoning. That's what happened at the last application, and that application was actually voted down. And it's a solid argument.
That was the Exxon application?
That was the Exxon application, yes. It was not the only reason, and I can't even tell you if that was the reason why the zoning board ultimately denied it, but that was certainly an argument that was put on the record.
Now, I knew that there was somebody that was going to be from potentially Wawa. Do we know if that person's here? He is.
It looks,
okay.
Yeah.
And I want to give him that opportunity as well, if I may. I don't know if you can pass the mic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a couple questions about Wawa that the public may be interested in.
Council President, following that, we, at the time this ordinance was presented to the council, and the council was thinking of taking action on it, we had a different township engineer. I think it would be helpful to have our current township engineer give her thoughts on this.
Oh, absolutely, but I want to have everything presented, and then maybe we will give Mrs. Fuentes some opportunity. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Sure. My name is Jamie Graziano. And just to clarify, I'm actually with the Varecchia Company, which is the proposed developer. I am not directly with Wawa. And actually coming to this meeting tonight, our understanding was that this was, in fact, with regards to not a specific project or a specific tenant such as Wawa. It was more just the general ordinance conversation at large. So you can continue with your questions, but if they are very specifically geared towards Wawa or a specific site, at this point I'm probably not going to be at liberty to share much of that information.
Okay, and you know what? I just gave you a small menu of what I was going to ask. I wanted to just to ask because of a lot of people, I don't know if anybody's seen, because Wawas aren't really up in they're coming in this area, but down in the south portion of Jersey and whatnot, they are, and they are a very, their formula that they have, their aesthetics, their safety-oriented, the employment that they provide. Those are kind of questions that I was going to ask to see if you had any insight of how many employees, their safety goals, what they anticipate to do, potentially the corridor of Green Pond and Route 80. I know DOT has been involved in very assisting this particular project or potential project that's there. So if you can't answer those things, I don't want to put you on the spot and ask you something that you may feel uncomfortable or can't provide that. So
no, sure, I can provide more, I guess, just a general information of what we're seeing in the convenience store type of developments that we see. We've been doing development as the Varecchia Company in Pennsylvania and New Jersey for quite some time. And what we're really starting to see with convenience stores is that the shift really has been to be more inclusive and be for the convenience of the customer, not just as far as sales of a traditional convenience store, but also including that convenience of gasoline. And that was part of the issue is as you see most of the development coming through, we are currently seeing most other townships start to try and modify ordinances for this particular use because it is fairly new. Previous to this, most of your uses were a gas station, which clearly Wawa, that has been brought up, is not a gas station. Or I think Quick Check was the other one that had been brought up tonight. Those uses aren't solely for a repair shop. They're not an auto shop. They are really focused on the convenience of the customer and of the consumer. That being said, locally, Wawa really tries to, really tries to think, no, I'm okay, thank you. Really tries to think of what do the customers want, what does the area want, and how can they best service their customers for convenience. And part of that becomes this new modified use that we've seen start to come into existence over the past 10, 20, 30 years, which is the combination of the two for convenience sake. That being said, Wawa's track record, I'm not going to speak specifically to their safety, but it has come up in other townships. Is it safe? Because the Wawa specifically does 24/7, and what we do actually have seen, not just at Wawa, but other type of these Wawa convenience store retail uses, is that the safety does get enhanced because the hours of operation are a little bit more continuous, and it's a little bit more of a smoother operation than just driving in to get gas or just driving in to get the convenience food items. The other piece that we're seeing is the gas stations currently don't so much supply what the latest consumer demand typically is, and that is they want prepared, healthier options, whereas I went into the convenience store tonight coming up here, and my options, I think, were my Lunchables or potato chips. So Wawa starts to really, I'm sorry, I'm turning my back to the audience too. At Wawa, Quick Check, those types of companies in the world are trying to start to bridge that gap for the consumer. I don't know if I quite answered your question.
Yeah, and the other thing is just there is an investment that these organizations, Wawa, make in the areas that they construct in to provide this business and service. Is there a kind of a range? Like they do invest substantial amount into their project that benefits not only the project but the surrounding areas, whether it be traffic or aesthetics and stuff like that. That's what I've seen so far.
Correct. What we've seen to the exact amount, I really wouldn't be able to speak to, but I do know that most of the driving force behind these types of uses now really is their community. They want to see, they're there not just for the out-of-towner driving down the interstate, they're really there for the community, and they want to see the community improved. And that's not specific to Wawa. That seems to be the trend in this type of development.
And there's also the permit fees and everything else that are associated
Absolutely.
with the construction of that we receive a revenue from.
Correct.
Somewhere in the high 80, 90, maybe even 100 plus thousand with these permits that take place.
And once again, I wouldn't be able to speak to the exact number. It really depends on the exact development and the exact situation. But yes, absolutely, there is always tending to be improvements, like I said, not only to the property itself, but to the local roadways.
And there's also a hiring of employees.
Correct.
They do provide employment for people, locals. They seem to dedicate that too from some of the research that I did.
Yes.
Our last presentation when Tom was here and Bill, so even now, I don't think anything's changed. So with that being said, Mr. Mayor, I know that you've had some communication with some of these members of the group that he's part of since December, January timeframe.
Correct.
But how many times have you spoken to them?
Handful.
And is that with the professionals or just with yourself?
Professional.
Okay. With that, Mrs. Ferrante, did you have any concerns or any issues moving forward with this from the conversations you had with this group?
Yes. Excuse me, got a little bit of a laryngitis. But I want to thank the council and the public for allowing us to introduce this proposed ordinance change to our land use documents, which, as you could see, needs to be well thought out and all concerns vetted. My major concern at this time rests around traffic. So when you create a permitted use, you accept the traffic implications along with it. To counter that, however, a lot of these zones are located along county and DOT right-of-ways. So often these types of developments will require permits from these outside agencies. So we'll be resting our traffic concerns with these outside agencies.
Now, have you received any reports from DOT since they've already been involved with this as a beginning of what they wanted to present? They worked with, I think Mayor Puzio, when he was a councilman, you had or stated that you saw a report with DOT at one of the council meetings.
I was on the planning board, and DOT, from what I can recall from back then, as I recall now, what I can recall from back then, being on the planning board and discussing this, is that obviously the county has to be involved in the state, because traffic is an issue there. What the residents have told me is that traffic on Green Pond, that is a major concern. So when I spoke with the Varecchia company, that was paramount as far as my concern also, is to make sure that there's an adequate traffic pattern. And the state is aware of this. I spoke with Ms. Ferrante. The state is aware of this, and the county is going to be involved to look at what they can do, what best practices they can do as far as the traffic goes.
Now, we've been dealing with Mr. Vitz from the county as well as members from the DOT.
We have been in correspondence with them, yes.
Okay.
And so if the township decides to go forward with this or similar applications, we would be intimately involved with that.
But currently this application is, again, the DOT has actually given somewhat of a thumbs up of what they were anticipating of changing and bettering the on-ramp and off-ramp of Route 80.
I cannot confirm that.
Okay. I'm sorry, is anybody... Mr. Palumbo.
Mayor Puzzi, I don't know if anybody would be able to answer. Do you know who is the final authority to determine whether it would be a traffic hazard putting this there? Is it the state? I mean, does the state and the county override the town if the town thinks it's an issue?
Oh, absolutely. The state is going to be looking at that off-ramp and on-ramp over there.
Right.
Obviously, like I said, the county has to be involved because it's on Green Pond.
Right.
So it's going to be a multi-jurisdictional project. There's going to be a few hands in the pot to get this done.
Right.
And as I said, traffic is, it was a concern of mine because I heard it was a concern of the public's. So we're definitely taking traffic in that area seriously. As far as what remediation or what things are going to be put in place to ease the traffic flow, if the ordinances are approved and council, moves forward with this, with the administration, that I can't tell you at this time. That would come through engineering as far as, what's best, what plan would work best.
No, but I guess I'm saying is if the town and the citizens think that this would not be a safe place no matter what is done, does the state give the final authority on the traffic piece?
No, the town does.
The town would.
The town.
That was my question.
Control.
If the state says that this is okay, and the county says this is okay, but the town says it's not, we would trump the decision of the county and state.
We could shut down the whole project.
Oh,
I mean, we could,
just asking on the
as
issue
far as
of
the ordinances.
on the issue of
Yeah.
traffic safety.
I don't think it's just that simple of an answer.
Novak might want to jump in.
Yeah, just to hop on what Ms. Ferrante had said. So, without using this site specifically, if an application did go through and it was not a permitted use and it was going in front of the zoning board and the board had concerns over traffic generation or traffic circulation, then they can deny that application. If an application for a permitted use went in front of the planning board, the board can't deny that application based on traffic generation. They could deny it based on internal traffic circulation if there's site plan issues, but in terms of how much traffic is being generated from it going in and out of the road, planning board would not be able to deny that. Is that what you're asking? I'm sorry, was it Mr. Palumbo? Yes. Okay.
Council President, can we hear from the engineer as well?
Yeah, I just have one thing for the engineer, so then she can, Mrs. Fronte, is that have you reached out to the engineer, Mr. Hanson, in Dover at all with the Wawa that went there with regard to?
Not in regards to this issue.
Okay, because on Blackwell Street in South Salem that they have over there in like 218, 220, 222 Blackwell Street, the flow of traffic and the patterns that are there is very congested in that area. But in their resolution, they kind of addressed all that.
And that's,
So I don't know if there's a potential of maybe reaching out to Mr. Hanson, Mike, Dover.
that's a D1 use variance?
Yeah, they had, I can give you a copy of that, what they have here, and that's in their C1 commercial zone. But I can provide this for you, you can review it. But I had spoken to Mr. Hanson at one time over this, with just the interest that I had on it. And maybe there were some similarities.
Yep.
That's a little bit smaller and more of a choking area in the traffic flow because of Blackwell Street versus it being one lane each way versus 2 lane on Green Pond Road in that section, and only one traffic light that's there going up Salem Street. But is there anything else that you would like to add based on what Mr. Palumbo had stated, Mr. Novak as well?
To Mr. Palumbo's point is every local land use approval is contingent on county, outside agency approvals. So while we may have approvals here, it's still subject to DOT, if it's applicable, or county approval, or DEP approval. So the notice to proceed cannot be issued until all outside agency approvals are met.
Now, the last thing before I guess we make a consensus if we want to move forward with this is that, Mayor Puzio, I don't know, since we haven't been somewhat part of these communications and conversations that you've had.
Everything that I know has been discussed here tonight. You know now.
I don't, because some of it's actually.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, I think there's more that's to there, which maybe we're not asking that right question. But moving forward, is it possible for the council to be a component of that, or maybe we make a committee that consists of maybe 3 council members? There's no quorum issues where.
You have an ordinance committee. You guys feel free for your ordinance committee to get together. I don't think that there needs to be another committee formed for this. You can have your ordinance committee get together, and I have no problem if you want to work with the town engineer and work with the professionals. Your ordinance committee wants to sit down.
No, I know that, but in the same sense, as you were aware of the ordinance committee, we haven't been provided with any of this during your conversations and whatnot that you've had prior to tonight. So I'm just trying to make sure that we're on the same page.
Do we have interest to get together?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. But we've had this presentation once. They had already come up before where there were some issues with notice. I believe the group has been very tenacious with the tenacity that they've had, very tenacious in moving forward with this thing. I think at least we should have some further conversation moving forward and see what we can do here. I think there's some adjustments like I cited before, Mr. Novak had issued on that section on line 13 on page 3.
Council President.
Mr. Yatrofano's talk. Is there something you want to add?
Correct. Yeah, I'm going to let Mr. Yatrofano speak for a second on this.
I just remind the council of what Mr. Novak said. And there are really two paths here. The one is the path of creating an individual zone change, which would be one thing to do, or a broader...
Can you speak to the microphone, please, Mr. Yatrofano? Sorry, thank you.
Or a broader master plan review or a master plan amendment to more comprehensively consider the issues. I think conceptually the council has to decide whether you want to pursue this, at a macro view or a micro view. And that's got to dictate the council's approach. That's just my suggestion.
Council President.
I have Mr. Geniak, and then I can go to you, Mr. Quinn. Is that all right?
It's very hard to hear the attorney's discussion. It keeps cutting in and out.
You know what? At the time, he was away from the microphone, but he was back closer to the microphone.
I cannot hear them at all.
Is there something? It was about the way to review this and go at it as far as moving forward for the Wawa in this ordinance. Was there a specific question that you think you may have had that you want to ask, or you just want them to speak louder?
No, I need to have it louder so we can hear it. It just keeps cutting in and out.
Okay, Mr. Quinn.
Council President, do we want to have the attorney just restate what he just stated for their benefit?
Mr. Yatrofano, if you could.
I think the real issue for the council is to decide on its conceptual approach. Mr. Novak has really given two options. The broader option being a review of a potential amendment to the master plan, and the narrower option being, I'm going to call it individual amendment of the constituencies or contingencies rather for that zone. I think, the council has, before, you get your nose to the grindstone and start worrying about conditions of an individual ordinance, I respectfully suggest that the council should consider how it wants to look at the overall issue presented and what that overall issue is. I also think it might be helpful to hear in a subsequent meeting from both our planning and zoning board attorneys whose ballparks respectively these issues really fall into. They can probably provide the council with some good practical detail, but I think it's going to be a lot easier for the council and probably more productive of the council's time to decide first how you want to pursue the issue.
Well, I think in this case, and I've seen this, Mr. Novak, that the attorneys on these boards actually lean to you for information. I've witnessed that, and it's a compliment.
Thank you very much.
So I think what Mr. Novak has presented to us and moving forward, maybe we need to have a meeting of the minds with the ordinance committee, perhaps Mrs. Ferrante, as well as Mr. Novak, and then we can maybe move forward to show the interest that we have. I think this council, I don't know if there's anybody that objects to kind of move forward to go into this. Mr. Freelander, is there anything?
Yeah, I think it's definitely happening. What they said, that just concentrating on that one specific line. I'm sorry. Concentrating on that one specific lot, I think we should look at the master plan, because it's going to happen again.
I think the litigation could be a potential issue if we spot zone or if we tailor it to that.
Exactly.
That's a concern that I think, as Mr. Saki, I think you probably share the same concern with that.
Council President, so of the two paths described, I believe the council in 2017 already took one path, and that resulted in the notice issue and the property owner's attorneys showing up to that meeting and adoption. I think that second path is the path that Mayor Datchton and I agreed is the path that we need to take, which is the larger view of the antiquated ordinances, because we're having two conversations in parallel. We're having a conversation about one particular property, potential project, And we have the larger issue of what can be done with our current land use code in Rockaway and making sure that it's competitive. And I think that gets to the point that Mr. Novak was making earlier and that our engineer was also making as well.
So why don't we move towards that direction? Maybe we can have Mrs. Ferrante and Mr. Novak to see what sometime in the very soon future when we could have a meeting with the ordinance committee and presence, maybe even the sort of group can come as well. And then we can have a discussion moving forward to see what we have. Just as the ordinance, as I stated, and only those businesses that I relayed in my statement, I just don't want to see innocent businesses that have a pre-existing nonconformity or are currently there. I don't want to see anything detrimental happen to them either.
Absolutely. The goal of this ordinance is not to make it harder on other business owners.
Correct. There's even a potential flaw of them not filing something in a timely manner that they weren't even aware of either. So.
And then it becomes a mess down the road.
But is that okay, Mr. Mayor?
If we're not going with the ordinance and we're going with the master plan, then we wouldn't need an ordinance committee, then it would just be a discussion with the planner as far as what we're going to do with our master plan. Then we wouldn't be looking at an ordinance, correct?
I believe ordinance changes are likely to be required as well.
An ordinance change is ultimately going to have to be required. What could be done is that and the ordinance that we did prepare did affect the entirety of the B1, the B2, and the I. Obviously, though, based on discussions tonight, it does need some cleaning up. I definitely agree with that. The two could be done simultaneously. It could be a land use plan amendment that's done in conjunction with an ordinance change. And that land use plan amendment could include that draft ordinance. If you remember the housing element and fair share plan, we included draft ordinances in the back of that. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the wrong town. We did not adopt the housing element and fair share plan.
But it's still an example.
An example, yes. I'm sorry. That's tomorrow night. My apologies.
Can I make a suggestion, Council President?
Sure.
Perhaps the output of that meeting, or that group, would be some sort of implementation plan, which would just list what are the parameters of what the changes that would be required and what things would need to be changed, such as ordinances and the master plan, without actually drafting those documents. That way we have some document that we can consume, and if we are on the same page collectively with that, then we can simply direct that those ordinances be drafted to match that, and we can compare that later and see if it...
Would that be more of an expedited approach to do it that way? Not that we're here to rush it.
No, but
it's been going on for quite some time, and
I'm
I
sorry,
don't see any momentum.
can you just repeat that one more time? I'm sorry.
Checklist, basically.
Essentially, to put together a document that captures what would need to be implemented, so the parameters of the implementation and what the mechanisms would be. So, for instance, if the goal is to enable certain types of uses, list what those types of uses are. If the goal is to restrict certain types of uses, list what those restrictions are, without us having to read through the wording of an ordinance to figure that out. Just a clean document that says, here's what we're trying to do, here's what we're trying to prevent. Things like you have lot size restrictions, I think I see it to the left side there, frontage, setbacks. If those things are proposed to be changed, and simply say, we're looking to change those things in just an English language document that we can understand, the public can understand, and if we then agree that that is the goal, then we can simply direct that ordinances and master planning documents be changed to be prepared to reflect essentially that design document.
So essentially it would be almost like a punch list for this proposed ordinance, what we're hoping to accomplish.
Yes. What are the goals that we agree collectively we're trying to seek out through legislative changes, whatever those might be?
We're just trying to bring everything up to modern times.
Yeah.
The use that wasn't something that was popular 20 years ago. However, it seemed to grow.
Plus, it's going to cost us an arm and a leg to draft and redraft ordinances, and us to try to read through and understand. Let's just have like English language documents that the public can understand, we can understand.
Well, we have examples too from other places in South Jersey that we can kind of.
Yes. Yeah, I prepared a memo, I think, back in 2017 with some examples.
We have some of those things as well.
Which is not necessarily a fun read, grant you, but we could do something like that. Essentially, that kind of almost sounds like a land use plan amendment, though, if we're talking about amending the land use plan regarding gasoline service stations. So those are some of the issues that we'd be addressing in that document.
Yeah, as long as it's in English language and it's worded so that even I can understand, then I'd be happy to review something like that. And I think then we can simply direct ordinances to be drafted that implement that.
Okay, so we can get Mr. Novak, so I know he's got to go, and the public is patiently waiting for their portion too.
Thank you very much for that, everybody.
And all the other professionals. So we're on the same page, Mr. Mayor, is that we can have a meeting with our engineer and our planner,
Absolutely.
and we'll kind of coordinate that with their schedules with each of the professionals. I would rather modify my schedule around theirs, so whatever they can do, I'll try to work around that to accommodate what times are convenient for you during your work time or whatnot. And I think the other members on the ordinance committee will do the same and do that. So moving forward, we really don't have to vote on anything, but we can have a consensus of a pull straw and say, listen, we're going to move forward with this. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Great. I can't thank you guys enough. I'll wait for an email from Mrs. Fronte or from yourself, Mr. Novak, and then we can assemble everything and see how our schedules work. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much for coming here. The public, thank you for being patient for that.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Bobby, did you get the list? Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Sorry? Isn't that already there? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. So we will go with that. Thank you for reminding me of that, too. The only reason I'm saying that is 7 years now. And then we would... Oh, okay. Real quick, we'll just go through, we have 3 ordinances we get to 5, I'm sorry, before we get to the open to the public portion. So each one of them have an open to the public portion if you wish to have any questions on that. We're going to go on number 8 on the agenda. It's ordinances to adopt. It's ordinance O-19-02, amending the personnel chapter, specifically section 26-6 entitled Personnel Policy and Procedure Manual, by repealing subsection 26-6.2 and amending the language of the subsection 26-6.3 to delete references to the employee handbook. And this, Mrs. Seeger, is something that we're dealing with JIF that had required us to make those changes?
They required us to update the handbook last year.
Yep.
But in our handbook, we reference, in our policy and procedure manual, we reference the employee handbook, which we really don't use because everything in the employee handbook is in the policy and procedures manual. And JIF gave us permission to only have one.
Okay. I have a motion.
I think you want to... public input before we do the motion, or we do the motion first?
I thought we always did motion first and then public. We want to do public portion first?
I don't remember.
Do we do public portion, or do we make a motion first?
Keep cutting out.
No one's talking, Jack.
No, I thought Pat Baker cut out.
No, I had asked Mrs. Seeger just referencing of this amendment if it dealt with anything with JIF from what had come down for deleting or removing the handbook, Mr. Quinn.
Okay.
Yeah. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Smith? Mr. Palumbo, second? This portion is open to the public. Does anybody from the public wish to comment on this ordinance? Seeing no one, clerk, please do the roll.
No.
What's that?
To close the public.
Close to the public, I'm sorry.
And then any discussion.
Is there any discussion that you have? Jeremy, do you have any discussion? I'm sorry, please do the roll.
Councilmember Quinn?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedlander?
Yes.
Councilmember Jedenak?
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett,
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson,
Yes.
Vice President Abrahamson, President Kelly.
Yes, I have 9 yeses, 0 noes, motion carries. I have 8B, that would be ordinance 19-03, ordinance fixing the salaries of various officials and contractual employees of the Township of Rockaway and the County of Morris. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second. Mrs. Seeger, do you want to just comment on this ordinance, if you could?
This ordinance goes along with the contracts that you approved?
That's for Council 6, right?
Yes.
And in doing so, this allows the mayor to sign those contracts?
No, you already passed that for him to sign it.
But this coincides with that particular contract?
Yes, this allows them to give us the raise once they sign the contract.
Council President, am I correct in understanding that this changes the salary ordinance to match the salaries in the contract that was previously passed by the council?
Correct.
Thank you.
At this time, it's open to the public. If anybody from the public wishes to comment about this ordinance? Seeing no one, it's closed to the public. Any discussion? 19-03, yes. Seeing no discussion, clerk, please do the roll.
Councilmember Quinn,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedlander,
Yes.
Councilmember Jednak,
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbo,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett,
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson,
Yes.
Vice President Abrahamson, President Kelly.
Yes, that's 9 yeses, motion carries. Ordinance 019-04, I'm going to defer that to the next council meeting. D, we have here, it's ordinance 19-05, an ordinance establishing the salaries for police department rank and file personnel in the Township of Rockaway and the County of Morris. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Smith? And Mr. Freelander, second. At this time, I'm sorry, Mrs. Seeger, did you want to make any comments about this?
This goes along with the police contract for their department rank and file.
And with that, after that's completed, we also do a withdrawal on the per complaint?
When the police unit signs the contract, I'm still waiting for them to sign the contract. It's been sent to them to sign. They have not signed it.
Is there a reason why?
If I knew, I would tell you, but I called up the head of the FOP, and he said soon he'll be bringing it, but I haven't seen anything.
Council President, so the contract that the council agreed to, we're being told that the union did not yet agree to that contract?
They ratified it already, but they have not brought up the signed agreement that was sent to them.
So then the question is, should these ordinances perhaps wait until we have that signature in place?
They're not going to get paid until I have that signature in place. I can guarantee that.
Well, they're being paid currently, aren't they?
They're being paid at their old rate.
Correct. So, again, should the rates change until we have a fully executed contract with the union?
It will not change until they're signed. This has nothing to really do with that.
Well, in all
The
fairness...
majority have approved their signing of the contract.
Right. But in all fairness, there's no representative here from the FOP to state whatever reasoning it is. I mean, you're telling us what you believe or what you think, but we don't have any documentation to support that.
The only documentation I have is we sent the contract to them. We're waiting for it to come back signed. It's not sometimes unusual, but we always pass the ordinances because until the contract's signed, they can't get these ordinances. It takes 20 days anyway to be in effect, the ordinance.
Right, but we don't know the reason for
Go
the
back to
delay.
discussion, I'm going to get the public section, and we'll come back to that.
We can do that, right?
No.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to give the public an opportunity. Anybody from the
They
public?
already signed the MOA.
Correct. At this time, it's open to the public. Anybody wishes to speak? Mr. Waters, come on up. Mrs. Seeger?
What was the question?
Mr. Waters?
Why don't we fix some salary and yet we establish other salary? Is there a difference? What we're doing here is we just copy and In 03 and 04, we fixed salary.
It's just wording.
Well, there's some that are
Welcome.
contracted, some are not contracted. Well-
No, because 03 is contracted, it says the same thing. Just choice of words from old ordinances. That's okay, Mr. Waters.
Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Mr. Arden?
Michael Amati, 19 North Brookside Drive. I wouldn't understand why you would not pass it, because they're not going to get paid when you get the contract back. So why would, like the chicken or the egg?
No, I agree. We were not aware that there wasn't a signing of that contract. We just found out now. There was nothing that was conveyed to me anyways. I don't know if anybody else had received any information with that.
No, Council President, in fact, I believe this is the first I've certainly heard that there was any delay at all with any of the contracts.
Yeah,
I'm surprised.
I was under understanding that everything was going.
I'm very surprised to hear that, but, we should have a fully executed contract before we start adjusting salaries.
Is that a good enough answer?
It sounds like they're not going to be adjusted until you get the contract. I mean,
That's
our
correct.
contract where I work, the union passed it in August. We still didn't get paid because there's one local in the country that hasn't ratified it. So we're still waiting.
Well, Mr. Seeger had said that it is ratified. It just hasn't been signed yet. And maybe we can follow up after this.
It could be sitting with their attorney. I don't. I did follow up, and the FOP president said it would be coming.
No date, no.
No.
Is there anybody else from the public? Mr. Lardy, are you done? Mr. Dio?
What happens if you pass it and they don't sign it for some reason?
They don't get paid.
They don't get paid.
They have to sign. What happens in a union agreement is the membership, the entire membership, is presented with an agreement. The membership has to ratify it. It means if there's 50 members, they have to vote yes or no. If it gets ratified, that means the majority voted that it passed. The agreement gets presented to us. It gets signed eventually, but it's on their end. It's not on our end. If they don't sign it, what they're saying is that until we sign it, we're not going to get paid. It's not an agreement.
And then they would be against another fair labor, because they've already ratified it. It's just waiting for a signature.
But from what you're telling me, it's the FOP Lodge 31 that's being lethargic.
Yes, they have the contract.
Is there anybody else in the public that wishes to speak? With that being said, close to the public. Any discussion here?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mrs. Smith.
If we sign it, if we pass the ordinance, you still have to wait for them to sign it to issue the pay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct, Mrs. Smith.
I just want to clarify that.
Yes, correct.
Thank you for that clarification.
Mr. Freelander, is there something that you have?
Laughing at it.
Right. I do have a quick question, though, for the CFO, Mrs. Palmieri. With these ordinances that we have, and we have another one, E, that kind of relates to the police department as well, with superior officers. With these ordinances that are going on right now, is there an audit going on with the police department in salaries at all?
The auditors audit all of our, they select a sample, including the police department. It's not just on the police department.
So they're doing a whole bunch of departments, Mr. Serenelli, but they're not strictly targeting the police department of an audit.
No, the police will be included in the audit,
Right.
along with all the others.
And there's nothing like a layoff plan or a demotion plan of any of the police officers?
Not that I'm aware of.
None whatsoever?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, but we would have heard of that. Mrs. Seeger?
asking something that I have no idea about.
No layoff.
I'm sorry, I'll recognize you, Mr. Mayor.
No layoff.
But there's nothing that's been circulated as far as a layoff or demotion towards the police officers?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Okay.
Rumors, I guess.
No, I just, and I'll ask the final question, Mr. Mayor. Was there any conversations from you related to layoffs or demoting officers or
Any conversations with who?
with the police department? Any staff meetings that you attended that made those comments?
No.
None whatsoever?
On what? Layoffs? Mr. Kelly, if there were layoffs, they would be receiving notices from civil service.
Okay.
There would be a process.
I'm just
When
stressing the
there's
concern.
There's a layoff due to economies and efficiencies.
Right.
Civil service, it has to go through the civil service process.
Right.
There's been no paperwork, nothing put in from this administration.
Okay.
I just made promotions, so I don't plan on laying
No, I
anybody
understand
off.
that. But I just wanted to make sure if there was a rumor that was going around of that being
I'm not
circulated.
aware of the rumor.
Okay. That's all. With that being said, clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember Quinn. Councilmember Quinn.
On D, I will abstain.
Councilmember Friedlander.
Yes.
Councilmember Jednak.
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbo.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Vice President Abrahamson.
I will abstain.
President Kelly.
Yes. I got 7 yeses, 2 abstention, motion carries. Then we got section E, which is ordinance O-19-06, an ordinance establishing the salaries for police department superior officers, personnel in the township of Rockaway in the county of Morris. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Smith. By Mr. Jackson. Okay. At this time, Mrs. Seeger, can you just give a small little brief about this?
It's the police contract for the superior officers.
And it's basically the same as the previous ordinances?
Yes, sir.
Okay. With that being said, I'm going to open it to the public. Anybody from the public wishes to speak about this ordinance? Seeing no one, close it to the public. Any discussion on here? Mrs. Smith, anybody? Nothing? Clerk, please do a roll.
Councilmember Quinn.
On E, I'll abstain.
Councilmember Friedlander.
Yes.
Councilmember Jednak.
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbo.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Vice President Abrahamson.
Abstain.
President Kelly.
Yes. That's 7 yeses, 2 abstentions. Motion carries and passed.
I didn't hear what you did with ordinance O-1904.
I deferred that to a future council meeting.
Okay, Council President Kelly, why are we deferring it without bringing it up? What's any certain reasoning?
I was just moving it out of there. Just more questions that I have about it at a later time, so we deferred it for a later council meeting.
Can we go over them now? Or?
No, we've already gone through it, so we'll go to the open to the public.
Okay.
Right? Good. At this time, we're going to have open to the public. I have Mr. Press. Come on up. Mr. Press, I'm not doing I know you haven't been here in a while. I haven't seen the audience. I'm not really doing any 5-minute, but I just ask for people to somewhat kind of keep it to a reasonable time, if you can. I'm not going to interrupt you.
All right.
At the floor.
Let me get started. Okay. All right. Dave Press, 71 Oakland Avenue. First, I just wanted to say, since I'm back, while I was in the hospital and as I began my recuperation at home, I was trying to not pay attention to what was going on in town in general and at these meetings specifically. But I was only able to maintain that for so long. I need to begin by asking the following question. Where do I sign up for one of those $70,000 jobs? Since it is apparent that much about these meetings has not changed, it seems that you need to be reminded of the following. For those of you who think you're better than others, you're not. For those of you who think you're smarter than others, you're not. For those of you who think you're attorneys, you're not. The utter lack of respect shown for our mayor is inexcusable. When you refer to Mayor Michael Puzio at a meeting on Facebook or anywhere else, he should not be referred to as Puzio. Our mayor should be referred to as Mayor Puzio. Take note of that, former Council President Jedniak. Speaking of the position of Mayor of Rockaway Township, it's Rockaway Township's worst-kept secret that the current Council President wants to be the next mayor of our town. It's evident from recent meetings that the current Council President cannot control the former Council President, and that the current Council President can't run a meeting. What makes the current Council President think he can run a town? Anyone who has driven or walked around Rockaway Township couldn't help but take note of the signs that are in front of many of our homes. These are the signs that say hate has no home here. This obviously does not matter to 5 of you. You need to take this to heart. Excuse me. You need to take this to heart and stop destroying our town. If not, you need to vacate your positions and even better, move somewhere else. Since none of us is holding our breath for this to happen, one thing is clear. One way or another, sooner or later, but not soon enough, changes will come at the polls. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Council President, if I may, I think you do a very good job of managing the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. I know all of you feel the same. Next we have Mr. Tahan. Come on up, Mr. Tahan.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Ray Tahan, 957 Green Pond Road. A special committee was appointed by Council President at the April 10, 2018 council meeting, consisting of Township Council members Abrahamson, Palumbo, and Smith, with Jedniak as alternate, to review resumes and conduct interviews of potential candidates for the office of municipal clerk. First of all, I'd like to know why we were looking for a municipal clerk when we had a very capable acting municipal clerk, Marcy Giannatasio, who had over 9 years' experience as a deputy municipal clerk.
Council President, just to make everyone aware that that question is a personnel matter.
No, it's a question directed to you, Mr. Jedniak.
And just for the record, I will not be divulging any personnel matters.
Please, everybody. Go ahead, Mr. Tahan.
Marcy worked side by side with the former municipal clerk and filled in to perform all the functions of the clerk when the former clerk was absent. Marcy was also very close to getting her clerk's certification, which she now has. At the July 10, 2018 council meeting, then Council President Jedniak stated that over 80 resumes were received for the position of municipal clerk. I want to know, out of the 80-plus resumes received, how many interviews were conducted by the committee? How many resumes were even looked at? This question is directed at each and every member of the committee. As I understand it, our new clerk, Christina Clipperton, had none of the experience or qualifications required under Resolution R-18-129 for the position of municipal clerk. In light of the fact that she did not even qualify for the job, how can it be stated by the council that Ms. Clipperton had the experience necessary and appropriate to perform the function of acting municipal clerk in the highest professional manner? In what way did Ms. Clipperton impress the members of the special committee with her knowledge and experience? Rather than retaining our acting municipal clerk with years of direct experience, you hired a woman whose career up until her hire for this job was making sandwiches at a deli.
Mr. Tahan?
Yes.
I have to ask you to stop.
Why?
Because you're completely wrong and you're lying, and you know that.
What am I wrong at?
You know that.
What am I wrong at?
Obviously, you haven't looked at a resume. I'm not going to get into personal matters. But seriously.
Seriously. That's her main experience.
I don't think you're completely wrong and out of line.
All right, then I take that sentence back. All right? Everything else is true and accurate.
I believe you're wrong in that as well.
In what?
Provide me...
What am I wrong in?
Send an email and you can provide me with the information that you feel that meets the requirements in order to be an acting municipal clerk. Send me that in the email. I'm not going to have this at a...
I don't need to discuss requirements.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm
I'm
going to go in
saying
here and
that...
ask somebody and do that directly of a woman that is in here on the dais doing the job as an acting municipal clerk. You're not going to do that.
I'm not going to do that.
You're not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that.
Well, I'm going to continue.
Is there anything else that you have in addition, outside of what you're doing now?
Yes, there is.
Really harassing and chastising somebody?
I'm not harassing and chastising anyone. I'm bringing out some facts. I'm bringing out some facts here that everybody
You're not bringing out facts.
Yes, I am.
You're bringing emotions to it to make it as if it's a fact when it's not.
I'm not bringing any emotions.
Those are absolute opinions. They are not facts, and they are absolutely harassing the clerk.
I have a lot of questions for you, Mr. Jedniak, concerning this. If you had over 80 applications for the job, how many did you interview? Well, let's have an answer.
I suggest you look at the minutes of the meeting.
I did look at the minutes.
Did you? Did you listen to the audio? Because you would have the answers to your questions.
You did not say how many people you interviewed. You just said that you had over 80 applications.
Mm-hmm. And we conducted multiple interviews. The council
How many is
conducted
multiple interviews?
It's more than one, Mr. Tahan. You know how to count.
Is it two?
Okay? Mr. Tahan, the council in filling that position interviewed more candidates than were interviewed at that time for police chief, for business administrator. It was done publicly. It was done openly. There was a committee selected. They acted professionally, and they picked the best qualified candidate. And if you were to look at the audio of that meeting and you look at the minutes, you would have heard that already.
Would I have heard what the qualifications were for Ms. Clipperton?
Yes, you would.
Or what the experience was?
If you were to make an open request of a resume to see the qualifications and the referrals that they had there, you know that's public record.
All employees...
And those that are not selected on there, you can also make an open request to see if, in fact, they're willing to divulge the information of those that were not successful for the position that's there. So you can do that under 47A1A.
I will do that.
Okay.
I will
So
report back.
I would prefer that you would do that rather than make false accusations and get some documents and facts straight so that we're fair on that. Because if you recall, when you called the clerk's office, you identified yourself with a different name to talk to Mrs. Genitasso, and on her off time to communicate with her of her experience that she had in a previous town. It concerns me that you identified yourself and lied about who you were when the clerk answered the phone when you contacted the clerk's office.
Well,
it's been documented, and I don't think we need to go further if you want me to test your credibility. So is there anything else that you have that you want in relation to this issue?
What makes you say that I did this?
Because
You're
there's
making
caller ID
accusations.
that comes up. 769-4001. Please, Mr. Tahani, don't challenge me on that.
Not
Is there anything
challenging you on
else that
anything.
you have?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
Continue.
Would you prefer I don't continue?
Mr. Tahan?
This is illegal under Rice. This is illegal what you're doing to her.
Stop, Mr. Tahan. Mr. Tahan and the...
All right, let's talk about some board appointments.
Mr. Tahan, could you just send all that in an email so we can move forward? This is obviously just going to chastise individuals that are here. We want to move this in an efficient manner. I am trying to do
You
that.
don't even know what I'm going to say.
I have the audience that is asking you to sit down. I'm trying to accommodate everybody to do that. We have professionals. Thank you, Mr.
Tahan has exceeded his 5 minutes.
Next I have on there is Mike Leardy.
All right, I'll sit down.
Thank you, Mr. Tahan. Hey, can I, real quick, I'm sorry, Mr. Lardy?
Yep.
Mr. Seeger, do you have tissues by chance?
They're up there.
Anybody have a
They're up
tissue?
there.
Okay, never mind.
Michael Lillardi, 19 North Brookside Drive. I tried to get here early so I can sign up first, but now I'm glad I'm third. Because first of all, this could be considered a hostile work environment to put her through this. Absolutely ridiculous. You ought to be embarrassed. Well, you should be. I was going to save this for last, but I think you should go back to the 5-minute rule. The last meeting, anything that needs to be said can be said in 5 minutes unless you want to have a campaign up here or a debate. Because you tried to relax the rules, and last meeting we were here all night because people wouldn't stop talking. So I think you should go back to the 5-minute rule and be a little flexible on it. But at least you have the option to say 5 minutes are up and have people sit down.
And Mr. Lardy, I was trying to give the benefit of the doubt for the individuals that are in the public to police themselves so we can do that.
But it doesn't seem that it can be policed. So I'm hoping that the council will reconsider that because it seems like they can't be treated as adults sometimes.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Ms. Siegert for getting to JCP&L to address the overhead light by the crosswalk by the White Meadow Lake Country Club. Within 36 hours, I had a response that JCP&L was going to change the light, and I'll get back to you if that doesn't happen. I brought up maybe a year ago 14 Cayuga in White Meadow Lake. The house was in foreclosure, I think, or bank-owned. The lawn wasn't being maintained, and someone from here contacted them, and they mowed the lawn. Then about maybe 3 or 4 months ago, there was workers there gutting the place like it was going to be flipped. That's what the guys that were working there said was going on. And then all of a sudden, within 2 weeks, the dumpster was gone and no one's been around. Some windows have been removed, so the property is actually open so animals can enter it. And there's been no activity there for months since they were there to clean it out. So maybe they got in over their head and abandoned it. But there's windows been removed and it's an open property, so I'm sure there's going to be animals living in it.
Mr. Lardy, before you move off of that particular point, Council President, a year or so, more than a year ago, the council did pass I think an ordinance.
Thanks.
Yes, you're aware of it.
Very helpful.
Thank you.
And it dealt with realtors and bank-owned property that were there, and I think that ordinance has been, Mr. Yatafano, has been somewhat successful, right, as far as getting compliance from.
I believe
so. Maybe we can look into that and move forward with.
Right now it seems to be like a.
Yeah.
Mrs. Fronte, she runs that area.
Council President, you want to explain what that ordinance did for that?
Well, it just gave the township some ability to go after the banks who were not following up with cutting the lawns and everything else that's there, and putting either violations there, even liens that are on there, to drive them to do that. I think we had, 462, Mr. Yatafano, 464 maybe, was the house that had burned down.
I don't remember the street address, but that was one of the main problems.
Okay, Council President, I believe that the ordinance change allows the township to actually do the work and then bill the property owner via a lien.
You try to have the remedy first before we go into that, but I do know that Mr. Yatafano has that, and I know that it has been successful, and especially on that one property where we actually had the house knocked down, and there was a lien on the property, if I recall, Mr. Yatafano.
On 464?
Yeah. The Decker's property that burned back in July 18th of 2000, January 18th.
The principal problem
2013.
was that when everybody, and one of the things the ordinance change permitted was,
Mike,
we could not, we had a lot of problems locating who the real mortgage bank was, because we found out as a result of the work we did on that property.
He is talking in the mic, he's trying.
We found out as a result of the work that Mr. Lutz and his staff did that a lot of mortgage banks are actually using other mortgage banks as the servicing agent for their mortgages. So, for example, I'm trying to think. Everybody thought that the mortgage holder was Wells Fargo on that particular property. And, in fact, Wells Fargo was not the mortgage holder. It was Deutsche Bank. And Deutsche Bank was paying Wells Fargo to just, collect the bills, if you will, on the mortgage, and to avoid any responsibility with the property.
But there was even some problems, too, with because I was dealing with the league as well as our court, that even with bail reform, Mr. Yatafano, it's even difficult to go after the property owner. Because there was no way of making them or forcing them to compel them. You couldn't do a warrant on some of the properties that were dilapidated, overgrown. and I was dealing with Mr. Costa on this not that long ago. So there were some other issues that the courts had also indicated. So it's a frustrating battle, but we can have our administration and
Yeah, I was just bringing it to the attention because it seems like it's going to end up creating a hazard with animals living in it and whatever else, being that it's open.
I'm sure we can refer this address to Mr. Costa, get it inspected, and go from there.
Yeah, that's fine. Lastly, on the presentation tonight with the Wawa, I spoke in the past about this. I think you should do all you can to change the zoning to accommodate this. The traffic cannot be worse than it is now. You're not going to be bringing floods of people in here to go to a Wawa. It's going to be the people that are passing through or going home or going to work that are going to stop at the Wawa. The interchange is such a disaster now, that's half the cause of the congestion. The offset from the traffic light to enter Route 80 West, that's half the problem. And from their presentation, the last time they were here, they were talking about they already got to DOT and have a plan to line that up with the traffic lights, and that would be a big improvement. Secondly, on that interchange, which I brought up in the past, if you're coming on 80 heading east and getting off at Green Pond heading south, basically making a right turn.
Going to the borough?
Going towards the borough, there's a stop sign there. Now, you don't really see that stop sign because you see a green light. And if you stop there, everyone behind you thinks there's a green light, so you're going to get rear-ended. And they're going to say, why'd you stop? There's a green light. I mean, I have no idea why there's a stop sign there. I mean, put another light there if you want another light there. I think they want to save money and they put a stop sign.
Well,
But if this whole project is going forward, that's something just to address within that whole project. That stop sign situation is kind of ridiculous, to have a stop sign with a green light.
And maybe with that, Mr. Mayor, we can maybe reach out to Mr. Sheard or even our chief to see, I mean, it's the state,
Yeah,
that whole on-ramp
yeah.
is state, from the on-ramp from the county road
Right.
to that.
But Rockaway's going to respond to the accident.
They do, as well as the state police, depending if it's on
Right.
the camp, the state's got it. But maybe we can just see if there's anything that we can do moving forward. It's just a phone call. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, it might have been a yield sign at one point, but nobody knows what yield means because they don't know what stop means.
Yeah.
So I think they put stop signs hoping people at least yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Next coming up is Mr. Wachowski. There he is. How you doing, Mr. Wachowski?
Eric Wakilski, 120 Richard Street. A couple of comments and then a question or two. It's my own opinion, and I think it's been documented some places, character and behavior of each of us and our past experiences, key indicators of what and how we'll all be, key indicators of what and how we will all behave as we go forward. Leopard doesn't typically change their spots. When you run for public office and you're an elected official, I also believe that your background is applicable and is open to conversation, discussion. You're elected by the taxpayers to work for the taxpayers, which is, all of the people in the town, not just the select few that may have voted for you. When a person is in their last days of life and they and their family are in a position where they're trying to reconcile and have peace with everything about them.
Mr. Wachowski,
I'm going
to just real quick. Sorry. I think I know where you're going. But I don't want to... It is freedom of speech, but we have somebody that passed.
What, you're really going to try to shut that down?
I'm not.
And because I'm not going to be the only one that's going to say it. I guarantee you that.
But I mean, just think about this.
I am thinking about it. I'm thinking about the family and the individual that passed on, who we didn't recognize tonight in a moment of silence. During that time, when somebody is passing, it's the opportunity to reconcile and go with peace. Anyone who chooses to make a decision otherwise and feels threatened by somebody who clearly has no capacity and has the audacity to take that person to court and not dismiss that, in my opinion, and many who have spoken to me, is a disgrace. Gene Myers had an article in which, Tucker, I believe you spoke to Mayor Puzio violating an ordinance, but when he appointed the current TA as violating it because they are a firm, and your commentary was, or your position is, that the ordinance says he, she.
Well, you're inaccurate.
I'm just reciting what was read in the article.
It was a resolution. I didn't have a conversation with Mr. Puzio.
Okay.
It was a resolution that was addressing multiple professionals, and that would be R-19-10.
Whatever it might be,
But
I thought I read, and I may be mistaken.
You are.
Okay, thank you. Then Mr. Myers must have misunderstood you?
No, but I read the same article.
Okay, because it's the opinion of myself and many others, the way it reads is that you're indicating that he's in violation of resolution, ordinance, whatever the heck you want to call it, because it's an appointment of a firm, not a he, she. If that's accurate, and if that's your opinion, then I just would like to ask, why then, in August, did this council, with whoever was sitting mayor at that time, one of the 7 we've had, authorized the appointment of whatever Inglesino's company is, blah, 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 firm?
It was appointing Mr. Inglesino, not...
No, sir. No, sir. I respectfully disagree.
Not Mr. Yatrofano, Mr. Peru. And in
August, the firm Inglesino, whatever is proper, how it's worded, and it's in the minutes, was appointed blah, blah, blah firm. So I'm not here to discuss it with you. I'm simply here to state and to try to understand why it's a violation now for a hire a firm and not a violation in August to hire a firm.
Council President?
I know where you're going to go. Go ahead.
Council President, that language in the code was brought to the council's attention by Mr. Schmidt recently, and just because things were done a certain way previously,
so it's okay to it was okay you violated, you're going to put the ownership again on somebody else.
So I'm trying to answer your question.
I didn't ask you a question.
Well,
all right, I'll stop answering.
To ask on that.
Thank you. I don't want you to answer.
But if you have that from what was going on in the moving papers that we've had with litigation, I can't get into it, but it's public record on some of that. It was something that was addressed by some of the attorneys as well as pro se litigants that are there. And then looking at that, and then looking at the past practices, there was an individual that was named as a town attorney rather than plural.
Right.
And I believe the response from Mr. Brewer, who was the attorney that's representing the mayor, indicates, well, you know what?
He said, amongst other reasons, they wouldn't stand.
Well,
we can go read the article right now, what was said.
There's an article, and then there's the conversation that took place.
So there's the printed document, and then there's the facts that aren't printed.
Well, so you're relating it on to what's in the paper, or are you relating on what's the actual ordinance in the law? So where do you go?
No, I'm not going to play this game, Tucker, where you're going to try to divert things, ask questions back and forth. And I said what I said. I made my comment. Your opinion, the public, and everybody else can make their own decision. It's pretty clear to many, the conflict, okay?
The attorneys raised that recently, Mr. Wachowski. I think you're aware of that, too. It was in the, some of the Facebook stuff that you selectively put around and whatnot.
Yeah.
But it was something that was raised by legal counsel as well as a pro se litigant in relation to that of one of the issues with regard to that R-19-10 of the 20 professionals that were on that resolution. The 19 that we moved and the one that we didn't is what Mr.
So I just have one last question, and I don't want to use up any more time than we have. The question is directed to you. Outside of your plea with Mayor Dotchison, in addition to the plea that you have as public record with the late Mayor Dotchison of assault and battery, my question to you is, during this 2018 year while you were sitting council, did you... All right, my question is, I'm not wrong.
There's no plea for assault with Mr.
Right. Well, anyway, the point is, it's documented that you had some...
Wrong.
Okay,
False narrative, you're wrong.
You had a violation of the assault, misdemeanor assault and battery.
No, you're wrong again.
Okay.
You're wrong again.
Anyway, my question is, during 2018, did you at any time while you were councilman, enter into a settlement of $10,000?
You know that there's nothing that I can discuss in regard to a settlement.
It's a public record. I'm asking you.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. This is public record. It is public record. Go to e-civil court. It's good. It's right. I have it.
All right.
Many of us have it. But you haven't answered my question.
I cannot talk about that document.
But you were okay post the Mayor Puzio settlement 2 years ago in discussion with the county, the council, and so forth.
There's a lack of disclosure on that settlement.
Okay. So, but you haven't answered my question. It's public record.
Read the document. You know.
I've read the document.
Right.
Okay, so then you want me to answer your question for you?
You can answer all you want. I can't talk about it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome very much. Thank you, Mr. Mikowski. Mrs. Kleindest?
Kim Kleindienst, 8 Nokomis Avenue.
How do you say it again?
Kleindienst.
Dienst, I'm sorry.
It's all right. Call me Mrs. K. It's fine.
Okay.
I would ask that you allow me to read my statements before you make any comments,
I will.
please. Thank you. It's been a busy month since we've been here, and there are so many topics that need addressing. Do I address Mr. Jedniak's ridiculous lawsuit against a dying man whom he feared would threaten him with violence? Well, sadly, Jay passed away. Still having that lawsuit caused ridiculous amounts of stress during his last days. But compassion seems useless to talk to Jeremy about. Do I talk about the fear involved in things Mr. Kelly seemed to be associated with? During a recall meeting, I was blown away by how many people believed Mr. Kelly should be the focus of the recall, but believed that many people wouldn't sign the recall form and have their name out there for fear of what he would do. It seems justified with the information that came out this week about another possible assault charge and settlement from while he was a sitting councilman. But again, nothing is going to change him or his behaviors. I've already spoken to Mrs. Abrahamson, and I see a drastic change in the bullying on the council. That's sarcasm, in case you don't know me. Mrs. Smith is still riding in the backseat of the car of complicitness, so Mr. Palumbo, it's your turn tonight. I had hope the one time you and Mrs. Smith voted against the rest of your voting block, but your time has come. The paperwork has been filed and certified to begin your recall, and what I'd like to focus on was your response to that recall form. Many of your rebuttals are correct, but not in how you think. First, you start by saying, a small group of insiders are attempting to recall a duly elected councilperson. Let's talk about a small number. You were elected with 581 votes from your ward. Jeremy was elected in 2017 by just over 1,900 for the district. There were over 3,400 signatures on the recall when time ran out. Which of those numbers seem like the majority of voting members of Rockaway? Second, your rebuttal stated that Rockaway taxpayers are demanding that their tax dollars be spent wisely. You're absolutely right. While all of us would love to see the details of the said $1 million of wasteful spending cuts you claim, and all I and the others see is the over $750,000 of wasteful lawsuits that could have been avoided if you had stood up and done the right thing. Third, you state Rockaway taxpayers believe that expensive full-time benefits for part-time elected officials are wrong. I and others agreed with you when we thought that was a legitimate claim. But twice, the courts determined that they were legal benefits. These benefits are also no longer offered to new part-time employees. You continue to hang your hat on this campaign slogan and do so in your rebuttal, stating, I oppose full-time health benefits for part-time elected officials. Let me explain something to you, Mr. Palumbo. Despite what you and your majority believe or claim, the courts have stated you are wrong, that Mr. Quinn is entitled to his benefits, as was Mike Datchison. So stop it. You lost. This is the behavior that makes you complicit. Finally, in your rebuttal, you stated the Rockaway taxpayers are tired of overwhelming taxes and a lack of accountability on the municipal level. Nothing could be more true. But you don't get it. What we're tired of is you. We're tired of you doing nothing but what your majority tells you to do. Tired of the same taglines that have been proven to be wrong in court. Time and time, the majority has been proven to be wrong, yet you stick with them and do nothing except make resolutions and decisions that the majority of Rockaway do not want. We don't want council members who unconsciously litigate members of the community for fear of violence. We don't want council members where people are afraid to stand up to them or sign a petition for fear of retribution. We don't want councilmen who have multiple charges of assault against them. And most of all, we don't want councilmen who sit back and do nothing while all this is happening. We don't want you. So as I've said before, I didn't vote for you. I can't vote you out for the recall, but I can, and I will be walking door to door this weekend collecting signatures for your recall. And if anybody wants to join me, welcome to the Bear Pack.
Ma'am?
Yeah, Mr. Jennings.
For the record, I've never sued anyone. So there is no lawsuit by me against any member of the public. Very easy to prove. I see Mr. Myers sitting there in the back. Mr. Myers or any one of you can go to the court and ask for copies of any litigation entitled Jednak versus anyone. You will not find any. More lies. The same lies that were spewed during the previous recall, which, by the way, was a complete failure. I'm somewhat disappointed that you've given up on that.
Hey, whoa, please. Mr. Wachowski, please. Mr. Waters, please.
My polite suggestion is finish one thing, then go on to the next. But don't pad your comments with lies. They're easy to disprove. They're very easy to disprove. The public sees through them. Go look for a Jednak versus anyone.
Mr. Wachowski. Mr. Wachowski.
Stop it.
Sure.
Thank you, Council President.
Mr. Palumbo.
Sure, I'd like to address a couple of your points. With regard to lawsuits, not one but two occasions, we've been sued individually. I mean, we're talking about money and lawsuits. First time, Mr. Dodgeson, Mayor Dodgeson, sued five of us named as individuals. We all had to get attorneys because they were individually named. I saw members of the public carrying signs, $1,365 an hour or whatever the hourly rate was, times actually 6 because it's 5 individuals in the council as a whole. Did anybody ever ask the question, who advised someone to sue council members individually? I had a lawyer up, so did everybody else here, on the taxpayer's dime. My attorney said to me, you don't sue individuals of a council. Why is that happening? I don't know. Can anybody here tell me, since you've addressed me, and I have some questions here, it's only fair, in regard to why would we be sued individually and then made to believe that $1,365, don't quote me exactly, the math is close to that, per hour, why we'd be blamed for that? Anybody here, administration, can answer who would advise Mayor Dodgeson to sue people individually on a council? I don't know. But that was thrown out. Happened again. My attorney says, I can't believe it's happening again, this issue. That was thrown out again. But to me, it made it seem like we were driving up the cost of this litigation. I didn't understand why we were being sued individually. With regard to issues over health benefits, it wasn't just the 5 of us, or I guess at this point the wards were up, that were campaigning on that issue. And by the way, I walked my ward, for between the primary and the general election, I can't tell you how many times. But many of the people believed whether it was illegal or not, and at that point it was still in the courts, whether it was illegal or not, it wasn't right. So maybe it was ruled legal, but to many of the people in Ward 1, it didn't matter whether it was illegal or not. It just wasn't right. And now, okay, I mean, is that fair enough? I mean, some things are legal, but that doesn't always make them right. And I'm not saying, you know, hey, the court ruled the way it did. But again, it went beyond the people running for the ward. There's other people up here that's matter of fact, a lot of their literature mirrored my literature, or literature I use about benefits. But I'm the subject of the wrath because I campaigned that way. And that's in your complaint there, am I correct?
You're still campaigning that.
Okay, so I still think it's wrong. And many of the people probably still, so it was deemed legally. I understand that. I understand, okay, I got that. But there's people there that'll still believe that no matter whether it's legal or illegal, it's wrong.
They don't have to sign.
Okay, I understand that. There was an issue in the rest of it about constituents not responsive. I tell you, I don't know if Mrs. Royak is here, Mrs. Lucas. There's plenty of people I speak to. I mean, part of your reason for recalling me was about not being responsive to constituents. I'm sorry? I didn't write it. Oh, but you read from it, though. Okay, so. Okay, but you read for it, and one of the bullet points in there, or whatever the complaints, was about not being responsive. Well, I tell you what, I respect people who are respectful back. I've had discussions with Mrs. Royak. I've had discussions with Mrs. Lucas at length, and we don't always agree, but they've always been respectful, and I'm respectful right back to them. I'm sure Sue will verify that. I see her in the audience there. However, one of the people complaining, let me read some of the emails that one of the people on your committee was sending to me. Quote, numerous absences. I have numerous absences at these meetings. That's in your numerous I never missed a meeting. I was on the phone twice. As many people know, health issue with my son up in Vermont. But I'm getting gigged, or I'm being accused of having numerous absences when I had to be on the phone because I had to go get my son. The other time, I had to go take him back from Rochester. We were up in Rochester, New York. Never missed a meeting, was on the phone for those things. But it's being put in that recall petition that I missed numerous, in the email, that say one of the same people on that committee, not your name, not named on the committee, saying me that I have numerous absences. That's a lie. I never missed a meeting. And the reason I had to be on the phone is because of my son. Secondly, get out and keep your family name intact. What does that mean? What has my family name got to do with what I do and what I vote with up here? Well, you're shaking your head no. But the same person I just left in a fit of anger, which I see, is writing, get out and keep your family name intact. What's my son got to do with this or my wife? Well, walk my neighborhood then and explain the whole truth. I don't know what the motivation is behind it, but you hear the whole truth.
Mrs. Kay? Just to clarify, though, with my litigation, I don't think you've actually reviewed my litigation that I filed back in 2015. And really my litigation was to get standing in order to sign a complaint with the crew of the courts about benefits, but it was primarily about an ordinance to allow the taxpayers to pay for it. So I know you're not really familiar with, Title NJSA 52-17-25, and I know that. But if you're going to come up and say all that stuff with regard to the benefits, then the court actually gave me standing and thought that it was going to cost more money to actually litigate to get back $1.4 million with that. And in that decision, the court never addressed the benefits that elected officials receive that are outside of the state health benefit plan. So there's dental, vision, and then there's also prescription. And that's still not addressed, and it doesn't have anything that states that in our policy and procedure manual And obviously through the state it doesn't provide it because we opt out from those benefits from the state. Problem that we were having is that we have police officers here that pay into through Chapter 78, which you probably don't know what Chapter 78 is. There's tiers under one salary that they have to contribute towards their cost of their benefits. And with that, our police officers that make X amount of money, they contribute close to $12,000 to $15,000 for those plans. But then we had elected officials that received the same platinum health care that only paid $1,500 and do nothing. And there's requirements of how many hours you put in, where a police officer will come to your home on Christmas while he's away from his family to protect yours. So that was the problem that we had, or I had anyways, with that. You know, we have a lot of volunteer boards, planning boards, board of adjustment, school boards. They don't get those perks. They don't get benefits paid by you. And if you're comfortable with it and it's a small amount of money and, you know, go right ahead and do it. As Mr. Sackett said, his mother works in a hospital. She doesn't receive benefits. And that was a problem at the time when Mr. Sackett was against that. Things changed. His opinions changed. Mine didn't. And I did appeal that based on it because the judge Capsell failed to address those issues of benefits outside of the health plan. But because of the untimely passing of somebody, I didn't go any further with it. I could have, but I didn't. But if you want to continue bringing that up, we could revitalize that and address those issues because we still have some stuff where individuals are receiving certain health care paid by the taxpayers outside of that plan where there's no law that allows it. So when you do come up here to challenge it on something of a complaint, and you're going to address me about that litigation, I would hope that you would have at least read it before you made a comment. And Mrs. Kay, if you could just turn around real quick. Can you just look in the back real quick? Those 5 officers pay a lot of money for those benefits.
Don't use that for that.
I am.
Don't use that.
I did.
Don't take advantage of it.
I'm not.
The police officers work very hard.
Please. I appreciate it.
But don't do that.
That's already done.
Don't use that right here. Don't use that.
So don't tell me what I said or what I did or what not.
About litigation.
You know what? It's what you conveyed. What you meant versus what you said. I'm only responding to what you said. But thank you, though.
Next on the list.
Mr. Dio?
Patrick Dio, 11 Valley Road. I just asked if I was correct. His first name is Mike. You don't mind Mike calling you Mike, do you? He said that he wanted to be first, but then he was glad he was third. And now I'm last, I think, on the list.
No,
I'm not.
Yeah, we got a couple more to go.
But anyway, at a prior meeting, I made a comment about the conduct at the council meetings. And I think every citizen has a right to get up here and talk. If they have a complaint the way the town is being operated, if there's a suggestion of how to make the town better, I think that's those important things for us as citizens to bring to the council. And the mayor is here. The mayor hears those comments. And then we all move forward together. But I, for one, am tired of coming to these meetings and listening to political rhetoric. That's all it is in my mind. And people have the right to say what they are. But I'd like to see us move forward to try to make this a better town for us to live in. And we all came here because we said it was a good town. And I want to stay here. You know, I'm getting old. But I'd like to see the future meetings when people come up here with a positive approach to how to make the town good without it bringing into the issue politics. Now, with that being said, I got a couple of comments. There's been investigation about the computer problem with the police station, and then I read in the papers that there was a investigation going on because, unfortunately, Mayor Datchinson's computer is missing. Is there any opportunity for the public to be made aware of what the status is of those investigations?
We want to answer them all in one shot, or, I mean, I think Mayor Puzio and I can agree that under
whatever.
investigation, we really can't divulge that information, Mr. Mayor Puzio?
Yeah, correct, that would be correct.
Yeah.
All right. The other thing is, I'd like to ask you, I know, by the way, the business administrator, I sent her a detailed email, and I'm very appreciative of the fact that she promptly got back to me with the questions, with the answers to my questions. It saved a lot of time at the council meeting. But I do just have a follow-up, Pat. When can we anticipate the budget?
We got it.
Mayor Puzio has an announcement for that.
Can I take 2 seconds? Sure. Read a statement for your benefit, Mr.
Let's read the statement with that afterwards, moving forward.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll just address that.
Wait till you're done.
Okay.
We didn't have any knowledge of the budget being presented now tonight. So.
Okay. All right. Then the two more things is I've noticed in the meetings that I've come to, and I don't come to them all, but in the meetings I come to, that there are occasions when council members vote no when it comes to approving the minutes. And the council members just have a reason for voting no. They just say no. I think it would be helpful for transparency and for the public to know why the council member who votes no, because as I understand it, every council member has an opportunity to request that the minutes be amended so that they can vote yes. And so that's just a suggestion. I don't know what the protocol is, though. And the last thing I have is when there's going to be a change in the administrative code, or is it possible that when we get the proposal, that we also get a red line version so that we know what the administrative code is saying now and what it's going to be like if it's approved. So those are my suggestions and comments and questions. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Mr. Dio? Mr. Dio? Do you want that responded in an email of Mrs. Seeger, since she's been so...
No, she responded.
No, I saw them. We got a copy of that, and she addressed everything in a red line and whatnot, and I appreciate that, Mrs. Seeger, for doing that. Can she do the same thing with that? Is that all right to respond to you in an email, getting some more research and some of the comments that you had?
No, I didn't ask about redlining in the email.
No. She you responded in red of your comments of what was...
Oh, she responded in red to me on my email. Yes, she did. She was very prompt in responding.
Respond back in an email.
Yeah, okay. I'm not talking about the email. I'm talking about the ordinances. Like if there's a proposed change in the administrative code, we in the public don't know what the administrative code says now, so maybe we get to see what it says now so we can then see what's being proposed and what the differences are.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Mr. Dio. Up next, Mrs. Coleman. She's no longer here. Up next is Mrs. Hollenbach.
Good evening, Mr. Council President, Mr. Mayor. I'm actually here about the Bowlbyville sewers. I'm sure you anticipated this visit. I was told there'd be a report in 30 days, and now I understand it's going to be an executive session. I was wondering why. It would seem like this would be of interest to all taxpayers, most especially me. And, we're concerned about $1 million in legal fees and all this other stuff. Nobody's concerned about this except me. I mean, we're talking about 20 years of budgets being submitted that had no anticipated revenue for a sewer assessment. This makes absolutely no sense. I would like some answers, and if I'm not going to get them, I'd like to know why. Whomever.
Is that what you... Is that it?
Well, I don't know.
Well,
Kelly?
I know that, but I don't know if there's something additional to what it was where we can pause and ask, or is it something else you want to add?
I want to know what the report that was due says about the Bowlbyville sewers and what we're going to do about it. Are we assessing the properties? What is going to happen next? That's my question. I think that's pretty well understood.
Well, just, Mrs. Palmieri.
I can give you an answer.
Yeah, I was going to ask Mrs. Palmieri something first, though, if I may. And the Finance Board has actually met on a couple of occasions that I've actually attended on some of those things dealing with the sewer, and you have been there as well. And between the auditor and yourself and moving forward, it's been an ongoing taxing thing with this particular sewer assessment from back in '93. I think the ordinance originally was 9305 that addressed that. But in all fairness, that Mrs. Palmieri did not have any information going on because there was a lot of stalls that we don't have any answers as to the reason why. You know, we had ordinance, I think, 9503, 9505, 9511, 1426 that were taking place with regard to this particular issue. And at each particular time, there was an increase of properties from 67 and going up down to 73 properties, which only one out of the 73, the Armory had paid.
Paid their bill.
$288,000, yeah.
Yes, but you mean to tell me out of all the residents that live in Bowlbyville, nobody noticed that they didn't get their sewer assessment?
Well,
no.
Well, they did.
Well, I mean, you know, let's think about that. Of course, who would? But
and maybe Mr. Iatrofano, from his 3 years of reviewing this, there have been people that were addressed that those were saying that they weren't connected, that they were connected to Dover's line. There was a report that came out, I believe, in '01, Mrs. Palmieri, from the tax collector that had a list of properties that were questionable whether or not they were connected. We had our water department superintendent, Mr. Shear, go out. I think some of them are still, I mean, this is going back since '01, so 18 years ago. There's still some that potentially aren't.
Mr. Kelly, when the sewers were put in, they would have had 1 year to connect to the line. There's no excuse. I don't know what you're trying to say.
I believe it's 6 months, to be quite honest
Oh,
with you.
well, then it's 6 months, okay?
Yeah,
but I thought it was 1 year.
No, it's under
1 year,
ordinance.
okay,
It's
not
under
20 years.
Act.
And since, as you well know, I worked for Mr. Dorsey at the time this took place, I objected vehemently to the cap on it, but I had no idea it was going to become zero.
Well, there's even potential challenges to the $16,000 cap that they assigned to that, because you really can't cap special assessment.
Well, there was,
So
whatever the case may be, I really don't care. All I'm saying is there's like $1.7 million if you're going to implement the cap, due this town. There's another payment due this year, and I don't want to pay for it. So if we're worried about legal fees and all these other things that are going on, I want to know what's going to happen with this sewer project. There were 3 projects done at the same time. Every single year, a budget had to be submitted. Where was that anticipated revenue, and how was this ignored? Who did it, and why?
Well,
I could care less assess it.
The auditor does report it. I think there's some issues where it comes to state aid, that if there's some things that are reported. If we had these issues, Mrs. Palmieri, would we potentially lose state aid, and it's put in different areas of the budget?
I don't believe there's any connection with state aid.
Nothing whatsoever?
Not that I'm aware of.
I had a different conversation.
Okay.
So I was under the inclination that that was something that took place. Maybe I misunderstood. But right now, Mrs. Seeger, I mean, from a while ago where you had already offered a report, and here we are beyond 120 days for this report, where are we at now with it?
The report was going to be given in the executive session at the last council meeting that was canceled for the snow. And the attorney and all my staff were going to be there. We all were planning on going, but the meeting was canceled. Tonight, I couldn't get all the staff and the professionals I needed here tonight. I asked that this be taken off the agenda tonight and be put on the last meeting in March, because that's when all the professionals and the staff could be there to present it like we were going to do when the meeting was canceled. But someone decided not to take it off the agenda, and these poor people would not show up tonight thinking that we were giving the report because I asked for it not to be put on the agenda.
No, you ordered the clerk to take it off the agenda, actually, if I recall correctly, and I felt that,
I didn't order anybody. We were talking, Miss Clipperton wasn't at the meeting when we were talking about the agenda because she was somewhere else, and I gave her the notes, and you can check by email. I asked her what we were going to put on the agenda this meeting, and I said, please do not put on the closed-door session again until the end of March because we don't have the staff.
well, you know,
Council President, I don't see it on the agenda.
it's under the resolution,
And I asked it to be removed.
You did ask to be removed, I know.
Quite
It's the
frankly,
title
I
of
mean,
the
this is
resolution.
not a Broadway play. It's a simple question, a very simple question. I want to know, are these properties going to be assessed? When? Okay, how, why, and wherefore? I don't care. I want to know how the township is going to get their funds back. Okay, if the armory paid the resident, and think about this, think about the inflation. $16,000 back then was a lot of money. Right now, I don't think it's quite as much money. And I really do think that it's got to be done, and I don't know why there's such a delay.
I don't know, but you could be asking for the last 25 years that to every council that's been here. And
I
that's the first time it's been
If
brought.
that's what I need to do, then that's what I'll do. But
Report
my
will be
simple
here at the
question
end
is,
of March.
what is the end of March?
The end of
Another 30 days.
Correct,
Yeah.
another 30
Council
days.
President.
But
And this makes sense to you, Mayor Puzo?
It's a 25-year process. We were going to
Mayor
present,
Puzo, I'm asking a simple question.
does it make sense?
Why
that
are there no assessments being placed on this land?
There's going to be a report issued at the end of
A
the month.
report. Again, here we go back to the report.
But, if I may, Mrs. Hollenbeck?
Mary Hollenbeck.
The report, Mr. Mayor, I mean, I don't understand why we're even going through. Why weren't we putting the time to move forward to do the collection of the assessment? And I mean, Mrs. Seeger,
You would get those answers when we present the report to you in executive session, and all your questions like that would be answered. And we were prepared to do that at the last meeting. I didn't order the snow, and the next I can get everybody together is the end of March, and I'll be happy to finally give you this report.
But
Believe me.
Who is the author of the report?
Excuse me?
Who is the author of the issue? Who is the author of the report?
Mayor
Who's the
Puzo,
author?
I'm not
It's-
seeing the
It's
legal
many
issue here.
people, but
All right,
the
you have
attorney.
title companies, you have the landowner. The original property owners have nothing to
Council
say.
President.
Get your checkbook out, okay? Anybody else, the title companies, some of them may pay, some of them may not. There could be legal issues.
Oh,
There's legal issues now.
Oh, it's an absolute legal issue that has to be fleshed out, and there's going to be a report at the end of the month.
Council President.
Go ahead.
So, the business administrator told us that the administration was prepared at the last meeting, which was about 2 weeks ago, to present the report to the council. Council has not gotten any report yet, but we get legal memos all the time. Why not just email us this report? So at least the council can begin to look at it, so we can have prepared questions for whenever it is the administration wants to actually meet with us to talk about it.
Mrs. Seeger, have you actually reviewed the report?
I do not have the final report
Do
in
you have a
in
component
my
of it?
email.
Like, do you have some of the report?
I'd have to look. at
What
the email.
were you going to
You
present?
don't know, you were going to put it on, you wanted to take it off, and now
I
you
actually
look, you have
was
the report.
putting it on because the attorney was bringing the report.
So the
He's not
attorney has
here.
the report.
Excuse me?
Mr. Iacofano has the report.
No. Oh, I don't know if he has the report. I shouldn't answer that. Sorry.
This doesn't make any sense. Mr. Puzio, Mayor Puzio, do you have the report?
I do not.
So who has the report?
I just told you that the attorneys have created a report. It's a legal issue. It's going to be presented at the end of the month. It's been here for 25 years, and we're making a huge deal for another few weeks. I don't know. That's what I don't understand.
This was raised back in September of 2008.
I understand that.
Okay.
I understand
And it
that.
started in 93, by the way.
Absolutely. I've been in this seat since November, and you're going to have a report at the end of the month. It's for a couple more weeks.
Why can't we get a foreshadow of the report now so we can have
Because
questions?
I don't have it right now.
Mayor
You asked
Puzo,
for-
why would this have to be an executive session when there's citizens'
I'm
interest?
going to have the
votes
attorney
in
answer
this
that.
event?
I'm going to have the attorney answer that.
Fine, no problem.
The issue of why it should be an executive session, at least,
Can you talk in the microphone, please?
the issue of why it needs to be an executive session, at least initially, is because there are potential legal liability issues which should be presented to the council first in closed session.
All right, Mr. Kelly, when this is presented to you, when can I expect to have an answer to my question?
I gotta be honest with you, Mrs. Hollenbach, I was hoping that we would have had a resolution to this a while ago since it's been brought up. There were some concerns whether or not people were connected to Dover, which has proven that they were not. It's been in the hands, again, of Mr. Yachafano since the last invoice I got is July of 2016. So this July, it's going to be 3 years. It may even be longer than that because I don't know of any invoices prior to that. We've had White Meadow Lake under those different trunk lines, 14, 17, that people have gone through their assessments. Are those assessments paid off, Mrs. Palmieri?
Are they paid off? They've
Yeah.
all been, the others have been assessed, they've been confirmed,
But I mean,
projects.
has it been completed as far as the collection?
I'd have to check.
Close to it, maybe? I mean,
Very close to it.
Okay. So, we have all these other ones that do it. There's going to be some bumps in the road, I would imagine. But I don't think, if I was in White Meadow Lake, I would be extremely upset that I'm paying for somebody else's assessment of the additional 72 homes, because the armory get paid.
I'm sure if you lived in Green Pond,
Mr.
you'd
Puzzi,
be
Mayor
even more
Puzio,
upset.
hey, listen, it's been 25 years, all right? Well, I think that's long enough. I think 10 years
It is absolutely long enough, and we're going to have a report for you in 4 more weeks.
Council President, that report already exists. We get legal memos emailed to the council all the time.
Report will be issued at the end of the month.
Why wouldn't you email the council with a memo like you do other legal
The report is going to be issued at the end of the month. We're going to discuss it in closed session with the attorneys, and they'll give you the layout.
Council
A couple
President.
more weeks, and that's my statement. I'm not going to keep going back and forth.
Mr. Mayor, I understand, and I appreciate that. Mrs. Ferrante, have you reviewed a report?
No.
Well, I guess that answers my question.
Thank you, Ms. Hollenbach. Mr. John Schmidt?
John Schmidt, Gloucester City, New Jersey.
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I was just writing.
I know sometimes you do add-ons to your agenda. You go into closed session to discuss certain things. Was any employee of this township rights noticed this evening for discussion in closed or public session?
Council President, it's something that the administration would typically do.
When you discuss a public employee in the state of New Jersey, the case is a rice. It's called a rice notice. Public officials of a governing body are not permitted. This is mayors, councils, board, local authorities, commissions, school boards. You cannot talk about a public employee or anything related to their official duties unless they have been rice noticed. That further extends to if someone comes up to complain about a public employee, if they are an employee. You have to be very careful of what is said and not said, because it could cross that line into talking about one's job performance. And I'm wondering if any employee was rice noticed this evening for a discussion in closed session or open session. Was any rice notice issued?
Mrs. Seeger?
I think the rice notices are usually done by the clerk's office, but to my knowledge, there has been none done, unless Mrs. Clipperton knows anything different.
No.
Mr. Yachafano, are you reading or are you just videoing?
I can
I'm sorry?
your questions.
I'm sorry?
Since I have a camera pointed at me, I think it's only fair I return the favor.
Oh, no, I didn't know if you were reading something looking up
All
for.
right.
Okay.
Do you have a question for me?
No, I just want to know if you were reading something and with regard to the rice, or if you were videotaping.
I guess.
She had already answered that. She said
No one was rice noticed. I'm not going to say any more. But come on. You've all been in office for over a year. Mr. Jackson, you've been on the school board before. There's a line, and that was crossed tonight. That should have been shut down. And I think the incident, that portion of the video where no one spoke up to say, stop, I think you need to send it to your labor council and maybe come up with guidelines for the future so a repeat doesn't happen. In the past meeting, I believe it was yourself, Councilman, and Council President, I forget which case it was, whether it was the Schmidt and Hollenbeck or Schmidt lawsuit. You asked me about a settlement. Did this governing body get my settlement offer in the Schmidt-Oprah case?
I'm not aware of anything.
Mr. Yatrafano?
I would caution the council in all respects concerning ongoing litigation.
You have a conflict of interest.
In which the township is a party. Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. I'll abide my own legal rulings.
Council President, I checked my email before we came in here. I didn't see anything related to that.
I mean, what matter would this be in relation to?
As you know, the court case was originally scheduled for February 12th.
What court matter are we talking about?
This is the Schmidt-Oprah case. MRS-L-002535-18. We had a court hearing on the 12th, which was canceled because of the snow. On the 11th, a filing was made by the Township of Rockaway, in which the majority of the documents I was seeking were disclosed. My attorney wrote on February 13th at 1:40 p.m., John, and this is to John Mills, now that you've provided the bulk of the documents that my client was seeking, do you want to try to work on coming together on a consent order to settle this matter? I would want to acknowledge that we received requested documents, set a timeline for you to provide any additional responsive documents, or a statement that there are no additional responsive documents, acknowledge plaintiff is the prevailing party and come to an agreement on fees without the necessity of generating additional fees with an appearance on the 19th. Let me know your thoughts, Al. I have a copy for everyone. And Al Marmero received a response back at 4:21 on the 13th. Roughly about 2 hours and 40 minutes after sending that email. He got an email back from Monica Dejmuk, legal assistant to John M. Mills, that said, Dear Mr. Marmero, Mr. Mills advises that he will not be needing a consent order. So, I know some people on in the social media, here at council, have asked me about a settlement agreement. I just wanted to make sure that that you received what was proposed, that I'm not here chasing down attorney fees for my lawyer to run up a bill, as has been alleged by some. That's the purpose of my asking that question. I'd be more than happy to give a copy to everyone through the clerk, if that's okay.
If you can submit it to Robert right there in the corner, and he can just pass it along.
And I just have one copy of the response. I realized that my lawyer never sent it to me. I asked him to send it to me today. Ms. Hollenbeck had printed it out for me when I was at her house before the meeting. So that's only one copy. If you would like it for whoever wants it, I only have one copy of this.
You know what? If you can hand me that.
The clerk want it, or she can make copies later, or...
Mr. Smith. Oh, am I allowed?
Absolutely.
Mr. Smith, could you please repeat Mr. Mills's response? Or is that administrative assistant? I'm sorry.
I believe it said, Mr. Marmero, Mr. Mills advises that a consent order...
I'm gonna read what I have here. He gave us the only copy to the clerk.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna read it. It just says it's answering to Mr. Marmero. It's to an Al Marmero from Mills and Mills, CCing John Mills, who was representing the township on this matter. And it just says, Dear Mr. Marmero, Mr. Mills advises that he will not be needing a consent order. Thank you. And it's the legal assistant to Mr. Mills, the third Esquire, from Mills and Mills, PC. I don't have a copy of this. This is the first I'm reading it, and I don't have a copy of these other things. Mayor Puzio, have you received anything? Mr. Yatrafano?
Not handling aspect of that case.
Well, you've been quite involved in the case. I just didn't know maybe if you had.
What do you mean I've been quite
So,
involved?
I'm not yelling at you. I'm just saying that.
What do you mean, please?
Council President, I would remind you that the attorney is here to answer our questions.
All right, so I just wanted to, I know it's been asked before, just wanted to put it out there. It's troubling that client, governing body, you are the client, did not get this. That's a whole other issue. I'm not going to go down the road, but it's out there. You know, we do have a hearing on the 12th where you have 3 government attorneys fighting over representation issues. That if, hopefully, my Oprah case is heard that date. If not, it'll be another date. Can just settle it. I mean, it's there for my attorney. So I'm letting the governing body know.
Mr. Petrofano, just in general, when there's settlement offers from either side, is the council customarily informed of those potential settlements?
Depends on the matter. It depends upon the attorney and the nature of the case.
And what determines that?
I can't tell you any more than I've told you, Mr. Kelly.
Okay. Is there a section of the code that you can cite that addresses that issue?
Section of what code?
Our administrative code.
No.
There's nothing that addresses settlements and approvals from the council and
I would suggest to the council that if it has a concern, it delegates a representative to contact Mr. Mills, who's in charge of that case.
That's it, Mr. Mills? I mean, Mr. Schmidt, sorry. I apologize. Okay. Mr. Waters? Yeah. How you doing, Mr. Waters?
I'm doing fine.
Good.
Council President, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. The floor is all yours. Grumpy?
Let's do this if we can. Jim Waters, 48 Seneca Avenue in the township. Happy to see the council here tonight, and the administration and the people who actually pay for this whole show of the circus that we've had. I thought it was getting better tonight. It was for a while. Went off the rails again a couple of times. I had a couple of questions that occurred, one during the presentation on Wawa or revising our various zoning regulations. We're referencing gasoline stations. Just wondered if we shouldn't also be referencing electric charging stations. I see we have a new one at the Rockaway Town Square Mall. Tesla has a charging station there between the movie theater and Five Guys.
It's a good suggestion. It's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it, but I'm told by a New York congressperson that in 20 years we'll all be riding in electric cars and flying electric planes and me too. A little levity never hurts here, but moving on from that, it's a comment I was going to make a meeting or two ago and dropped it and then brought it up again. And I want to bring it up again because it addresses the meeting of January 1st, the so-called reorganization meeting. And my objection to that meeting is that the person who organized that meeting knew, well in advance of that meeting, had been notified in writing and by phone, and I don't believe that's a lie, that majority of the council people would not be there. Yet that person allowed 2 Morris County freeholders and the Morris County Sheriff to show up for a public embarrassment and then held 2 charades in the hall where he pretended to call people that he knew wouldn't be there. That's an embarrassment. I don't know how you justify that. I know your mom probably... Never mind.
Council President, you made phone calls January 1st, actual real phone calls, and if there are any records of phone calls that the township keeps, perhaps the administration can check the billing for that.
Are you denying that you knew there would not be a majority here?
You stated that.
Are you denying that you did not know in writing?
Mr. Waters, I hear you.
Mr. Waters stated that there were no actual phone calls made, And yes, they actually were made.
The second
From a
time.
real phone.
Not
So
the first time
we
we
made phone
watched you
calls.
the first time.
We made phone
The
calls.
second time.
We made phone calls.
The second time. You didn't make any phone calls the first time because people were watching you out there. And you knew nobody was going to respond. So you allowed us all to be embarrassed by having two Morris County freeholders here and a sheriff showing up to support the township when you knew there wouldn't be a meeting. No excuse for that.
Mr. Waters?
Sir,
Just if I can just hit on that, Mark.
of course you may. You're the council president.
Well,
sir.
it's not necessarily so. I mean, we're equal here. Just because I'm in this seat doesn't make me any better than you and where you stand. But let's just think about this logically. I think you and I kind of touched on that a little bit.
Mhm.
We had a matter that's before the courts in the Chancellor Division. The C-131, 18 is the actual docket number of that case. And it dealt with having meetings or legal meetings related to the October 23rd because of a failed notice from the reorg meeting in 2018 and other meetings that were potentially flawed in their noticing, which we didn't know at the time until the ruling came out after the fact.
True.
Right?
True.
So we have litigation that takes place that surrounds having meetings. So we have our own ordinance that you review, and you review it differently, and you have your opinion on where it says the first Tuesday of January to have the reorg meeting. And it's just fortunate, or unfortunate, depending on how you look at it, that this year, 19, it fell on New Year's, right?
Correct.
The next time that's potentially going to happen, I believe, is 2030, that it will fall on New Year's again. So it will be 11 years from now. However, under the difference of government that we have, Faulkner Acts and other plans that are there, it's customary, celebratory, that meetings take place on the 1st of January. Now, the Faulkner Act is a little silent on that. However, we have a code. So now you pick and choose. Like, well, we have a code that says we have to have it on the 1st. You know, we had known that for the longest time moving forward. There was another elected official that wanted the answer for everybody to cancel the meeting, that it wasn't going to take place, which has no authority to do that, but exercise that authority. And then, because of the open and pending litigation that we have here, that is really focusing on...
Cutting to the chase, Mr. Kelly, Council President Kelly.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt.
No, that's
but
okay, I understand.
The point is,
No, the
it
point
was
is-
known before the meeting was...
The point doesn't matter, though. You
Okay.
have to...
You can't correct a notice violation by holding a phony meeting.
No, that's not the case. You have a code that you were trying to adhere to.
You can't adhere to it if you know there's not going to be people there.
You don't know. You don't know.
You were informed in writing, well in advance of the meeting, that you would not have a majority.
I was informed by some that there may be a change in that.
I think
That's not correct.
I think we have emails from everybody except two people
No one
here.
with any authority communicated to me that we would not be able to have a meeting.
That is, as you like to state, a lie.
Mr. Waters, really, to be honest with you.
The fact is, Council
I hope
President,
for the record-
it's a minor miracle that we haven't been sued over that issue, in fact. Because the township would lose. It would lose because 6 people didn't attend the meeting, 3 people did. We had a quorum for our volunteer firefighters swearing in earlier that afternoon. Our volunteers, firefighters who are volunteers, they don't get paid to do what they do. They get out of bed. And
You were told there would not be a quorum here.
They have no problem.
You allowed us all to be embarrassed by allowing freeholders and the sheriff to show up at a meeting that would not be held.
What is actually
They knew you're actually incorrect with that.
What is actually embarrassing is the fact that our volunteers don't have a problem getting together on January 1st to reorganize, but council members wouldn't get together to do the same that very same evening. The fact is, a year before, the clerk's office was made aware that January 1st would be 2019 would be the date. That's how far back the clerk's office was aware. The first issue that arose, the first notice we got about any kind of concern about the first, was when there was no time left before the last meeting of the 2018 to do anything about it, to change the code so that we would be able to be in compliance with the code and have it on some other date. Now, since that, and I said this then, I took it upon myself to draft an ordinance, which was on the agenda for the last meeting for discussions, on for tonight as well, to remove that wording from the code so that we won't have that issue ever again. Because the current wording in the code, which is antiquated, right, and out of date, all it does is create liability for us. It ties the hands of the council in a way that no other council in Norris County gets tied.
And I think that having non-lawyers drafting ordinances also subjects us to considerable liability. So I would suggest that you let the township attorney draft ordinances.
Right. And what you would also know is that the request was made to do that.
If you knew in advance, right, that the meeting wasn't going to commence because of the lack of quorum, right? Is that what you're saying that you had?
We knew in advance.
Why did you come? What made you come?
I came to see if our acting council president was going to make a jackass out of himself and the rest of the township.
That's what you came to witness that?
That is exactly why I came.
And the other professionals that were there that knew the situation that still came in hopes.
That's a good question. We should ask the sheriff and we should ask the two freeholders why they came after you told them there wouldn't be a quorum and there wouldn't be a meeting.
Maybe, you know what, you should have asked that before you made your statement.
Yeah, okay. Why don't we do that then? Okay.
Can we move on so we can get one more last person, or is it something else?
That's not very nice. We stand here and we listen to grumpy people, too. Okay. The other thing that struck me tonight that bothered me is your frequent use of the word lies when it really applies to things you don't like. Okay. You've accused the mayor of doing illegal activity without any proof he's done anything illegal. That would be a lie. You've claimed that you saved the town $1 million, returned it to the taxpayers, when all you did was take money out of a surplus account and temporarily return it to the taxpayers. We're going to have to take it back this year. Your claim you saved $1 million for taxpayers is a lie. There's several other instances which I won't go into here because Grumpy's going to come up and smack me. But I think I've made most of the points that I wanted to make tonight. Thank you.
Council President, I'd like to ask our CFO if the council took money out of a surplus account for last year's budget.
No, you didn't take it out of a surplus.
We cut actual line items.
Out of line items.
Thank you, Mrs. Palmieri.
Thank you for correcting that lie.
Mrs. Degman? Mr. Waters, the one thing I'm going to ask you is, and I've already mentioned this to you before in the past, just the vulgar language, it's not necessary. I get it. You know what? I mean, is that really necessary, though? I mean, I consider you a professional. She contradicted what you said. Let's just leave it.
CFO Palmieri, can you please confirm that the council cut actual line items from the budget?
Mrs. Palmieri, it's done. The matter's moot. You already answered. Nothing what you're going to say is going to change Mr. Waters' opinion on that. And I appreciate your opinion, Mr. Waters. And we can respectfully disagree, right? If we can just move on with Mrs. Degman, the best for last.
Maybe. Pat Degnan, 88 Valley View Drive. One thing I wanted to say is last night, White Meadow hosted a program given by the Morris County Sheriff's Office called Project Lifesaver, and I brought the material from there. It might be something that we could do as a township to inform our residents.
Did you have a good turnout?
Not.
No? Excellent. Was the sheriff there, though? Was Gannon over there?
No, he wasn't, but he sent a representative, and she did a very beautiful presentation. It only lasted a little over an hour. She brought materials for us. Project Lifesaver is for people with dementia or people who tend to wander, sometimes children with autism, and they have a way of tracking them. They don't have to wait 24 hours to report them missing and stuff like that. So I think it's something that the township as a whole should do some kind of a program like this also. And the other was the Crime Stoppers program, which I wasn't even aware of, because they talk about tips that you give to the Crime Stoppers line, and people are concerned that they might, if they give a tip, they might be found out that they tipped the officers as to who was, but you're totally anonymous in that program. But both of those programs are very good, very well run. The presentations are excellent, and it's something that we should publish more.
I wonder how they get paid, though. If you're not supposed to know who you are, how do you get paid?
They give them a number, and then whoever is assigned to give the person the money plans to meet with the person at a specific location. The person is tells them what they're wearing, and they don't have any names or anything. Looks like him, yes. So it was really very eye-opening. As a citizen, sometimes we don't really want to get involved, but this is a way for us to get involved and help stop some of the crime that is committed without putting our lives in jeopardy. So I wanted to bring that to the council's attention. Then I reviewed all the agenda because I printed out before I get here so I can read what's going to happen. On the consent agenda, there are 2 resolutions regarding Morris Commons. And rather than have everybody maybe spend an hour discussing it, most of these refer to settlements that have been reached because of litigations, so it's not something that the township council can change. They have to go forward with these resolutions.
We've had this discussion in closed session prior.
Okay. Then for discussion, you have 1907, amending the rules, and it's going, and I pulled up that resolution, and it says to delete one of the sections, and the section that you're saying to delete is regular meetings, 2-5.2. The council shall meet annually for organization on the first Tuesday of January at 7:30. The council shall meet regularly thereafter on the second and fourth Tuesdays of each month at 7:30. If a regular meeting falls on a legal holiday or such other day when the council determines it would be inappropriate to hold a meeting, the council by resolution can set the time and place of the regular scheduled meeting. I cannot see taking that whole section out. If you wanted to revise something, what I would do is revise the first line, which says, meets on the first Tuesday of January unless this falls on a holiday, rather than delete the entire passage. Then the other thing I have is, I've not heard of Rockaway Township Day, and I see on the agenda you have it as June 8th. Is there a committee that's working on this? So how can we have a day if there isn't a committee?
We're going to actually address that. Actually, the day that's incorporated is actually April 8th. And I think this has just been dropped on to us. I know that Mr. Sackett was attempting to put together Rockaway Day, and it did not pan out. Mr. Quinn had changed some dates for the Rockaway Football League to change their days for their game so that they would have the day down at Peterson Field. And again, it did not happen for whatever reason. I know that there was some other issues of commitments and stuff like that. So now,
because that's something I would like to be involved with.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny that the Historical Society is doing something, and they do a phenomenal job, but they are doing it for the 175th celebration, and it's going to be a celebratory thing. I think that's on April 1st. Yeah, that they're doing that. And the Rockaway Day issue that we have, there's a couple of questions that some of us, I know I do, I would imagine everybody else does, to address that. Again,
I mean, I know we did have Rockaway Township Days years ago, and they were very successful, and the town turned out. We had it at Peterson Field, and it was a wonderful thing. And many of the current Mayor Mike was involved with it. I believe some of the others were involved with it. I'm going back a lot of years ago.
Remember Mr. Fuzio, Rockaway Day? Do you remember it?
No, she just said mayor like that.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because you and I both know, like when you do your
we do festival
event,
days.
I only do one day event. It takes us months of planning doing that, and we talked about that last year.
Yeah. We do 3 days in White Meadow, and we start planning a long time ahead.
Depending that's there, and there's budgets and monies and all of the questions that.
But it's something that we should bring back. We need some unity in this town because we don't have it right now. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Mrs. Degman was the last one that's there, but is somebody that had missed signing in that wishes to speak? Go ahead, Pat.
Patrick Egan, 59 Lennox Road. You know, I made my own resolution at home with my boss, the mayor, my wife, and she told me don't speak anymore at meetings. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to do it because I don't want to bring up things, right, unless I've got something to say. So I don't have anything really prepared, but and the only reason I'm speaking is my wife left. So she comes back in here just close session. So I don't want to take a lot of time here, but
you have the time.
First and foremost, thank you for everybody up here. This is not easy, right? I love reality TV. I like the New Jersey Housewives, right? But this is no place for the New Jersey Housewives. It continues to be that on both sides. We got majority, minority. We've got Cumberland County here. I can't follow this, right? So there's a lot of stuff.
They're all citizens.
All citizens, yeah, absolutely, all citizens. And I think we agree that this has got to stop. This is just nothing's getting accomplished here. And I don't know if I can say this, but Ms. Clipperton, apologies on this is not about you, right?
We don't need to even go.
Yeah, all right. So in no way should any township employee who is working, who has a job, be subject to any of this that goes on here.
You know what, Pat, just real quick, I just want to remind you, Mr. Tahan is actually a planning board member. So he's a part of.
I'm not addressing him, and this is another issue I have.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, this is another issue. I appreciate you're a very smart man, and I appreciate what you do. But it's always you're always interrupting and turning it into your agenda, like what was done over here before. It's every time it's a deposition of our township employees. No. I appreciate it, and just let me talk because I didn't plan this, so this is off the top of my head. But it's always like even before with now this secret layoff meeting and the questioning: was there a meeting? What's going on? Where are we going with this? And it just seems like not yet. It always seems like there's a deposition going on. And it just seems unfair to the employees of this town. I know sometimes it's appropriate, but it just seems to me, my N of one, that you're just trying to dig something up. Okay? I hope your son's okay. Talk to you later. What else? A couple things. Talked about that. Oh, the revisiting of the benefits. Okay. Don't use it as a rod. If there's an issue that needs to be revisited, because the way it was addressed to Mrs. K, right, I can't pronounce your last name either, was like, well, if we keep bringing it up, we can revisit it. Because, well, if it's an issue, bring it up, revisit it. If it's not, push it aside. I keep hearing that, oh, well, I have to pay for my benefits, and they have to pay for their benefits. And the police officers, yes, they do have to pay for their benefits, right? I have educators in my family. They have to pay for their benefits. I have to pay for some of my benefits. I manage people who always say, well, this company will give me this. Go work for that company. Change your career. If someone's entitled to something, let's not use our police officers, who we know work very hard. And probably everybody in this room has had an experience where an officer of the law has helped them out and protects them every day. Let's not use them as the starving puppy and say, look at the starving puppy. Look what they're going through. Okay? I thought that was wrong. If you have a point to make, don't use them or anybody else to make a point. And last but not least, the recall that was addressed by Mr. Jedniak. And I could imagine, you've been through a lot. I get it. Some deserved, maybe some not deserved. You get ready to speak?
I don't feel like I've been through a lot.
Okay.
I'm here to serve the public. And
all right, that's fine.
And I willingly accept all that comes with that. And to those who are out there laughing and...
Let me speak. You can address it afterwards.
Mr. Egan.
Because if you were the council president, you would have shut that down right now.
Well,
this is my time.
Thankfully, Mr. Egan, we have a much more lenient council president these days.
Yeah, well, I'm not as lenient, okay? But it was sort of an insult when you said it, and I get maybe you're a little hurt by it. You said it was a failure. I don't know if it was a failure. We'll find out in a few months whether it was a failure or not, right? And again, I've got nothing personally against you, right? But I think you insulted the 3,000 plus people that signed that petition. I think you called them, their efforts a failure. I don't think it was a failure.
Look who's calling the kettle black now. You sat there and I talked about how the police officers pay towards that, and you're saying, hey, you can't go there, and then you're trying to turn it around and make it something completely what it wasn't.
No, he called it as a failure. I said my interpretation of it. I can't have an opinion.
You can't.
I said I felt that he was insulting the 3,000 plus people that signed it, okay? Look, maybe it was a failure, maybe not. We'll see in a few months. Thank you.
Mr. Egan, could you just stay there for a second? Yeah, you're right. It isn't easy for the members that come up here and do that. And it's probably not even easier for you.
I'm sorry, I missed that first part.
It's not easy for the council. I can't really answer for all of them, but I'm assuming it's frustrating. It is, no matter what side you're on. That's there. And it's probably not so easy for you, too. You know, and when you first came here, you went on and you called Rockaway Township, and kind of that was the point.
Oh, I'm glad you called me. Yeah, I did.
That was you know.
You're good. You got a good. You must write down a lot of notes. Yeah.
But you
so did a lot of people in this town, by the way. When I went around, a lot of memories about you. Trust me.
Yeah. I don't know if we want to get into that, though.
Oh, maybe, maybe not.
So,
we'll see.
With you talking about Rockaway Township, and if you want to make an accusation on something, you're more than welcome to.
I didn't say I'm making an accusation. I'm just saying I heard. That's no accusation.
But, you know, when we talk about the police, I am going to make them, because they're the best example to me.
That's fine, and we agree with that. But you were using it to prove a point.
Mr. Egan, please. Remember you stopped me from it?
Absolutely, you're right. You're correct.
And then Mrs. K brings up the benefits, and you're saying, well, I can't address the benefits that are on there, because he was inaccurate of what the actual litigation was in reference to.
Okay.
And you had all the opportunities to do that, where there were challenges and hurdles to get standing to go forward, which I was granted. There was covered by insurance, because you asked me about the payment of that. It was an insurance company that was paying it, no burden to the taxpayers, until they tried to intervene, which they never received that. So there was a lot of things that you and I talked about, and you were inaccurate what you said. And I didn't really challenge any of that.
I'm inaccurate, okay.
But then when you come in here, and you know, you're talking about the failure and trying to turn it around and saying that he's making fun of those 3,400 people, that's not true.
Can I have an opinion?
It is, though.
That was my opinion as I interpreted it. So you can't get in my head.
No.
And listen, you're trying to turn things around, okay?
Listen,
and,
Mr. Palumbo.
And the fact is, okay?
You're interrupting me when I wasn't going to interrupt you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You're right. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. I'm done. Mr. Palumbo, is there something you want to add?
Listen, Pat, I would just say that the benefits issue came up as part of an issue of a recall, right? I mean, isn't that why it regenerated itself here tonight? And
that I have no.
Yeah,
but I was commenting. Go ahead. All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. But what I'm saying to you is, who's rehashing the benefits a year later? Not I. Somebody looking to do a recall. And that's fine. That's their right to do that. But to say that, okay, we're bringing it up again, or that's not how it came to pass here tonight. It came as part of somebody reading off my statement, my answer to a recall statement, and I really, and then the conversation, I guess, got more entailed, but it wasn't brought up from this side. It was brought up, and I think the record, you know, has to be clarified a little bit, right? I mean, I do have a right to respond to things, but...
Agree. Absolutely agree. That wasn't the point. The point I was making was that Councilman Kelly, Council President Kelly, stated that, well, you know, we can bring that back up again. More like, look, the more you talk about it, we can revisit the benefits.
It was pretty simple.
You've definitely got the right to respond on that.
Mrs. K wants to talk about the benefits. We still haven't completed the conversation about those ancillary benefits that wasn't addressed in the court.
So if it's an issue to bring up...
Is it really worth the issue now?
But don't use it as a stick to threaten.
Hey,
you know what? If you bring it up again, then we're going to open the case up again. If it's a case to open up...
Talk about complicit and everything else, and use that sticks. And it just seems that when it's turned on your end, it's not something you're interested in.
So, well, I mean, Pat, doesn't it work both ways? The citizen stands at the mic, point, and that's fine.
I get it. This is tough for you. I totally get that.
Well, we'll see if it is. But what I'm saying to you is things can come up, and no matter no matter what the rebuttal is, no matter what, for instance, I've been accused of driving costs, legal costs up. I ask a question, why are council people being sued individually?
So now, I'm not even interested in this, and I know you're smart because you think this is like, great. I see it.
I like to smile, Mr. Egan.
I know.
I don't do enough of it, but I'm going to try to do more.
Look, I don't want to waste more of their time.
See, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Questions can be asked, or I can...
But Councilman Palumbo, this had nothing to do with you. All I was saying, and I'm going to end it because these people are getting tired, is...
Matt, this is going nowhere.
It is. You're absolutely right.
Thank
I
you.
agree.
All right.
This is going nowhere.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mr. Egan. Come on up.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Egan.
Hi, Wendy Slosky, 54 Kings Road. I just want to say I do not live in White Meadow Lake. And I hear about all these wonderful things that happen in White Meadow Lake. I still live in Rockaway. How come only White Meadow Lake people know about all this wonderful stuff going on in White Meadow Lake that we hear about at every meeting? I don't live in the lake.
Well, that's where Lake Telemark, Green Pond is a completely isolated private community. Lake Telemark, we do some events that are open to the public. White Meadow Lake, right? You guys do
Well, when
whole
stuff
bunch
is
of
open
things.
to the public, is there a way to have it broadcast a little bit more?
I believe the newspapers, they do advertise that.
I don't get those.
Council President, I believe that when groups and citizens have events, those can be submitted for the township calendar if they have a wide enough
They
audience.
can, on Facebook pages and stuff like that. I mean, is there a specific thing that you have an interest in that you would like to be involved with?
The two things that just went on this past week, I would have been happy to attend both of them.
Well, it is on social media. Are you on Facebook?
I am on Facebook, but I didn't see anything.
You know what, if you can maybe talk to Mrs. Degman and you can get on their Facebook page with White Meadow Lake Matters, there's White Meadow Lake, there's Lake Telemark.
Okay, I missed it.
Pat reached out to me.
Are you on the township's Facebook page?
Oh, I am.
I mean.
All right, I missed it. I apologize.
Yeah, but I know that the mayor and Mrs. Seeger, they do that pretty frequently.
Okay, yeah, I know Mayor Puzio posts a lot of stuff. I saw nothing about any of that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right. What's that? All right, you guys. Can I close the open to the public portion, everybody? Clap, please. So at this time, we're closed to the public. Let me get my agenda here. You know what? Can we just take a...
Before we take a 5-minute recess, I just want to read a small statement I handed out.
We're going to take a 5-minute break, so we'll just take a 5-minute break real quick. Sorry, you guys. Everybody's got to go to the bathroom and... We're going to be on the record. It is 10:47. We have the consent agenda. There's no order, it's just to introduce, right? We got the consent agenda is resolutions R-1937, R-1938, R-1940, R-1941, R-1942, R-1943, R-1944, R-1945, R-1946, R-1947, R-1948, and that would be the consent agenda.
Council President,
Councilor Payne?
could you remove R-1947 for further discussion? Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the standing.
Standing one's off? There's one over here, please. Mrs. Abrahamson and Mr. Quinn, are you still there? Okay, thank you, guys. you, Bob. Okay, we're going to move R1947 for discussion. Make a motion. Motion made by Mr. Jackson. Mr. Quinn, right? Is that what you said? Yeah, Mr. Quinn for a second. This is the adopted, yes, I'm sorry, to adopt the consent agenda. And we removed R1947 for discussion. Right? Can you do the roll? Yeah, we pulled that for discussion, Mr. Quinn.
I'm sorry. Councilmember Quinn?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedlander?
Yes.
Councilmember Demnak?
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Vice President Abrahamson?
Yes.
President Kelly?
Yes. I got 9 yeses, 0 noes. The motion carries for the consent agenda. Did you want to have a discussion on
Yes, thank you. So I think Mrs. Degman already left, but the same question she had.
No, she's there.
Oh, I didn't see you. I didn't see you there back behind Mrs. Hollenbeck. I'm sorry. So that sounds like a lot of us. But the same question she had. I mean, this is the first that I had heard anything about Rockaway Day. Is finding it on the agenda and the information that we got, which is the same as what the public got. So perhaps the administration could present this resolution to us and explain this.
This resolution was prepared to pick a date at the request of the Recreation Advisory Planning Committee that they would like to declare this day so they can start finalizing plans. They don't want to move forward and plan the day without picking a date, getting it on the calendar to let everybody know, and then the plans will come together and they'll notify us and keep us informed as the plans are made.
And the date currently?
It is June 8th, 2019. Rockaway Township. We will change that.
So to the
It's
Right.
September.
yes, they do. And they also have the boroughs is mid-September.
No, the boroughs.
It's mid-September for the last couple of years. I checked it.
Yeah, there's an we saw the advertising on the...
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
So we would like to get this date out early, so we put it on the calendar, and the planning will happen, and everybody will be informed as the plans go. And I am sure that the committee will take Mrs. Degnan to help on that committee.
So
Right, Mr. Sackett?
I think that having a day is a great idea. I think the timing of this is a little concerning, given that we haven't done a day in how many years, a decade plus. Mr. Sackett tried to organize something last year, had a tough time, uphill, didn't end up happening. Our neighbors in the borough do it in mid-September. We're looking at June 8th. The actual date, as Council President Kelly mentioned earlier, of Rockaway's incorporation is April 8th, so we're 2 months off. But June 8th is when people go away for the summer. People aren't around.
That's exactly.
Yeah, but a lot of people start going away who might otherwise be here.
That's the date we actually picked before school got
Excuse me. Can I finish? Can I finish my comment? Can I just finish?
Yeah.
So, I'll come back to me. So maybe I'll remember by the time Mrs. Smith is done.
Can you go ahead? Are you talking about Vendor Day, Rockaway Day?
I'm talking about the Rockaway Borough Firemen's celebration.
That's the fireworks that they have.
That's-
There's also a Rockaway Day.
That's in July.
But there's also a Rockaway Day that they have with the trains. All the vendors,
Right.
They
They
close
have
on
a
the
couple
street.
of-
That's in September.
The actual Rockaway.
I was incorrectly thinking the boroughs was in June and it's in July. I'm sorry.
Right, but the actual Rockaway Borough Day, which they call Rockaway Day, which they have a domain registered, rockawayday.com, is all in mid-September. And I just think that given that we haven't done this in many years, a decade or more, and that our neighbors to the south have been doing this consistently for all that time, and they do it in mid-September. We should look closely at the time frame that we're looking at. Many of the festival days happen in the fall as well. The other question I have is, what, if any, costs are associated with the event?
It's all free? Like it's all donated?
I'm going to let Mr. Sackett speak to this a little bit because he's part of that committee. That's very hard. Give him
Who are the members on the committee? Okay. But I mean, who appointed all the members?
It was a while we talk.
Well, I was just looking at him, that's all. Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to let Mr. Sackett get a very comprehensive explanation. Yeah, go ahead.
The only thing I think with, and Mr. Sackett can answer about the particulars and timing and everything else, but the June 8th actually does make a little more sense in the sense that we know it's going to be warm. Can't speak for rain. I mean, it is what it is, right? We didn't order snow in the last meeting. We don't know if rain's coming that day. And typically the kids aren't getting out until, June 20th, 25th? Correct. So, I mean, June 8th, strategically for that purpose is a good date. I don't know, can't speak for the other purposes. If there's timing and the cost and everything else, that's for Mr. Sackett to speak to.
At the Council President, at the reorganization meeting, the mayor appointed the Parks and Recreation Committee, and one of our duties is to work on the Rockaway Day and 175th anniversary. There's been a lot of people, I've seen it on social media, wanted to do something for the 175th anniversary, which is April 8th, as you know. The Borough Day is actually August 4th. It is not in September. So with this date, June 8th, we thought it'd be a great day before families leave. Children are still around. It's not too hot. July, August, a lot of people are away. And we've been, we've met, our committee. You can look up from the meeting from January 7th. All the members are right on there. And if Mrs. Degnan wanted to come to our next meeting, she's more than welcome. They're open. It'll be a great day. It's not costing the town any money. It'll be at Peterson Field on a Saturday, all-day event from 11 a.m. till 9:30 at night. And it'll be a good fundraiser for the town. We'll be doing a collection that day for the Rockaway Food Pantry, and it's to be a great day for everyone. We did try to work on it a little bit last year, and then when Mayor Jackson passed away, we stopped. And now, with Mayor Puccio appointing this new committee, this is the first thing we're working on, and really want to get the date locked in now because the Recreation Department gets a lot of requests from baseball to use the fields, and we want to lock that down before that, and we are hitting it up in plenty of time. This is not last second. We're going to have enough time to get it all done.
Can you just kind of tell me what the program's going to be over the course of 10 hours?
Hopefully, it's not finalized exactly yet, but hopefully we plan on having a good food truck festival aligned along all the asphalt around Peterson 3 and 4. There will be a band. There will be kids blow-up rides, different balloon art, sand, kids with the sand design, and that's really the main. They plan on doing fireworks, hopefully, to celebrate the anniversary. Those aren't exactly 100% finalized yet. We just want to get the date on the calendar.
Well, the fireworks that we've been dealing with, and it goes by minutes.
Yeah.
Mrs. Degman can probably assist a little bit with it because we use the same firework company. Do you still use Dave and Skip for fireworks, Mrs. Degman? You do, right? We have a smaller show. Ours are like 10 to 11 minutes, and it's roughly $5 to $6 grand. Is this something you're going to get donated?
Yeah, this with a vendor we plan. Hopefully, we work on. They will be handling all that. They will be handling all the expenses, and the town will get half the money back. So we're not going to be spending any money.
So the vendor for the truck festival, which is common, where they give you a percentage of
correct
how many heads that are there, but you're assuming that, I mean, there's prepayments for fireworks. You you give them money in advance, and some of these other ones, do we have a deposit amount that we have to give in advance?
We're not working on it. It's not all worked out.
Yeah, it's not all worked out.
We're working on it.
yet. We're just, like I said, trying to get the date, and then as soon as we get it finalized, hopefully, real soon, then we can give you the exact details and go from there. But we just want to get the date on there. You know, we can't do anything until we have the date. We got to reserve Peterson. You know, before the Little League wants it, we have to get the date on the calendar, and that's it. That's really it.
Is there a reason why we don't do it on Memorial Day? To combine it, because we have a parade later in the afternoon. You have the overtime of employees and police officers, and you're going to be doing that back to back.
This is a date that we picked. It worked out best for the vendor that we're looking at, so we're going to stick with this date.
Who's
We're just
the vendor?
looking for approval.
We don't.
I
don't.
You don't know the vendor?
I don't have it
Zach,
on me.
you know
I don't
the
have it
vendor?
on me right now. I don't have the card on me.
I think this is really a nice positive event for the community to get together and everybody work together.
It's not a complex event. The vendor's going to take care of the lion's share of the work. We just need to reserve the date. I mean, I can reserve the date from where I sit. I'm just trying to be inclusive of the council.
Say that again, Mayor?
I think it'll be a
I
great
can
day.
reserve the date from where I sit. There's no expenditures that are going to be taking place from the town. I'm trying to include the entire council on this. It's a good thing for the town.
Mr. Mayor, will there be any township employee resources applied to this event?
Overtime, police officers, personnel.
I don't anticipate much.
So do we have a dollar amount?
We're still in
No, sir, we're in the planning stages. We are in the planning stages. I just need to lock June 8th in.
So here's the issue, Council President, if I could. We have before us a resolution which says, number one, Council President.
Mrs. Degman, Mr. Schmidt, please. We can hear you pretty good over there.
So we have a resolution, or 1947, the actual text of which, under the resolved section, says, number one, June 8, 2019, will be and shall be hereby declared to be Rockaway Day in Rockaway Township. Okay, so we have a request for an amendment to call it Rockaway Township Day. And presumably, if the date's fine with everybody, the date's the date. Number two says the mayor and administrative staff, along with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, are hereby authorized to take all steps necessary to effect the purposes of this resolution. That sounds like a blank check under number two. So I don't have an issue with number one if we're good with the date, but number two I think should be amended to be removed so that once costs are known and a plan is assembled, you can come back to us with the spending plan and we can approve that.
Okay, listen.
I think what is meant by number two is that you give them the okay to move forward with planning the event. That's all that is. It doesn't say to spend money.
Then let's modify it to say that.
Well, modify what? It doesn't say anything about spending.
It says all steps necessary to effectuate the purposes of.
Which the purpose is declaring the day and the committee to go ahead and plan.
So
That's all that says.
So if there's any related spending, use of employees for this, you're going to come back to us for that authorization.
I think the mayor can authorize the employees
Correct.
to do it if they stay within the budget and they're
That we're not spending any money.
What budget exactly?
You asked me about personnel. The event is not going to cost any money. I don't anticipate the event to cost any money. I anticipate it to be a fundraiser.
If you're using
Hold on. I anticipate it that it's going to generate income for the town, for the recreation department. That's the anticipation from the event. Whether there are collateral costs, a police officer like the 7 that we have here right now, or some DPW workers to do some cleanup, that's what I anticipate. Nominal, if any. Certainly under my purview as mayor to authorize. I brought this event to this council tonight to include you, all of you, on something positive. I don't need your authorization. I don't need anyone up here. I want it to be inclusive, and this is what it's turning into, a myriad of questions and badgering and mental gymnastics. The day will be June 8th will be Rockaway Township's day, celebrating the 175th anniversary with or without the support of the council.
Council President, we've been told that there will be no cost for the event, yet we've also been told that the mayor can use the township resources as he sees fit, which is a cost to the taxpayers. He says he doesn't need us.
What's there to vote on? He says he's going to do it.
There's nothing to vote on it because he doesn't need
You don't want us
us.
to vote on it, Mr. Mayor?
Vote on it.
No, I hear you. No, I appreciate it. You don't want us to vote on it.
No, we do
No,
want,
I support it.
no, we do want you to
I
vote
support
on
it,
it.
but you told us not to vote on it.
No, we
I
did
wouldn't
not.
bother.
I get it, Mr. Mayor.
We don't need to.
If you don't want to vote on it, don't vote on it.
Make,
Mrs. Abrahamson, go ahead.
And if Mayor Puzio doesn't like the questions asked about how the taxpayers' money is spent, it's very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. I don't think everybody on that day is saying they don't want a Rockaway Township day.
proven.
There's a lot of expenses in the horizon for us.
There's no expense other than
exactly.
There's a lot of expenses which is on council within the last. Okay, so implications, as Mrs. Seeger said, it only means this. Well, it's open-ended. Okay, I feel we all want a Rockaway Township Day. I lived them with my children. They were wonderful. Jack Quinn has to remember them. Okay, but I do.
Make a motion.
Can I make a motion, Council President?
Are we done with discussion? So, Council President, we have one request for an amendment that came from the audience. You have my request for the amendment to strike out item number 2.
John, since Mr. Sackett, that is, putting it in there that it's not going to cost any money, that there's no going to be any. I'm asking you a question. I'm not asking what you were told. I'm asking you, would you be comfortable amending it, saying that?
Okay, Council President.
You just said that there's nothing. Why wouldn't you?
I don't see anything on here that says we're spending any money, so.
Well, why don't we put something on there? Exactly the point.
Council President, I make the motion for R1947 with the 2 amendments. 1, to rename it Rockaway Township Day, and 2nd, to strike out item number 2 there. That's my motion.
But we're leaving the date.
If the date's good with everyone.
No, it's big again.
Please.
I want to make, then I can make a second motion.
We have a motion on the floor.
You can make a second motion.
You want to confuse it, Manny? We make a motion to amend, and then we can make another motion to amend, or you want to do 2 simultaneously?
Do you want to ask first?
No, we're just going over it right now. So we're amending it to say Rockaway Township Day. And then we're going to amend to remove line 2. Is that correct, Councilman? Mr. Palumbo, do you understand that?
Yes.
We're changing it to, instead of Rockaway Day, we're changing it to say Rockaway Township Day.
That's the first thing.
And then since it's not going to cost any monies or anything like that, we're going to take away line 2. Okay. All right. You made a motion?
That's my motion.
Anybody want to second the motion?
I'll second it.
Second by Abrahamson. Not right now. We're in the middle of a roll call vote. Second by Abrahamson. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Quinn? Councilmember Friedlander?
We're doing both at the same time? No.
Councilmember Jednak?
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbo?
No.
Councilmember Smith?
No.
Councilmember Sackett?
No.
Councilmember Jackson?
No.
Vice President Abrahamson?
Yes.
President Kelly?
Yes.
I'm going to make my motion.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4 no's.
No.
And
1,
we
2,
have
3, 4, 5, 6,
3 no's. Six no's, 3 yes.
Motion
Fails.
not carried.
Okay, now I want to
Go ahead.
the resolution as it is written, but with the exception of changing Rockaway Day to Rockaway Township Day.
So
The second
make it
part.
a little bit clearer.
Okay, I'll make a motion. No, I hit it. I turned it off. First part, change Rockaway Day to Rockaway Township Day. And the second part, as written and stated in the original resolution.
Second.
We have a motion made by Mr. Freelander and second by John, did you second it? And any discussion?
Council President, my concerns is that this gives a blank check to the administration, and the mayor has already said he doesn't need the council to spend township resources in the form of labor of township employees. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Freelander, anything else? Okay. You did.
I just want to make sure that I'm writing this down correctly. The
Mr.
motion,
So just to change Rockaway to
Well, we have to
Rockaway
change
Township.
Rockaway Township.
Excuse me, Mr. Freelander.
Okay.
We're changing it to Rockaway Township Day. That's it, line 1. Everything else will stay the same.
okay,
That's the only amendment, correct, Mr. Freelander?
That's correct.
so this is
Council
just to
President.
amend it.
Just to amend the name difference from Rockaway Day to Rockaway Township Day.
Are we good now?
Jackson, please call the roll.
Councilmember Quinn?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedlander?
Yes.
Councilmember Jednak?
No.
Let's get it done, Tank.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Vice President Abrahamson?
No.
President Kelly?
Yes, on the change for the Rockaway Day. So we have 2 no's, 7 yeses? Now you gotta vote on it.
Excuse me, Council President.
Yes.
I will vote, I wanted to say I'll vote yes for the change of the day, the amended day.
That's what we were voting on. We were voting on the resolution as a whole.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Not that we need to do this, because Mayor Puzio's gonna change it, or do it anyways, he said.
No, you introduced it. He made the motion to, no, he made the motion with
What's
the
that,
amendment.
Vinnie?
That was for the whole thing.
No, it wasn't.
That was for the whole thing.
No, it wasn't, Mayor.
Oh, okay.
That's not. I heard him say they moved it with just the change.
Do I make a motion again? Make a motion again?
Councilmember.
Okay.
Councilmember.
I make a motion to change the first part.
No, it's already changed.
Then let's make a motion to vote.
Second.
If we can just hold on a second, because you guys are getting real confused over there, we're talking and whatnot. You made a motion to amend it to Rockaway Township Day from Rockaway Day. Jonathan then seconded that motion for that change. We voted on that change, and there were 2 no's and 7 yeses to amend the resolution. So the resolution now is amended to say Rockaway Township Day in line 1, and there was no other amendments that were there from what you had requested, right? 2 and 3 are going to stay the same, other than the one with Rockaway Township Day. Now we need a motion to actually vote on the amended resolution. Okay, well, I mean, you're looking at me like...
No, I wanted, but you told me to stop. I want to make a motion.
Second that.
For the amended resolution.
Okay. And Mr. Zaki seconded that. Any discussion? No. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Quinn? Councilmember Friedlander?
Yes.
Councilmember Jednak?
No.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Vice President Abrahamson?
Yes.
President Kelly?
Yes. We have 8 yeses, 1 no. Motion carries.
Yeah.
No.
You move all the council appointments at once.
Yeah. Number 12, we have council appointments.
Council President, I'd like to move all the council appointments as one item.
Anybody have any issues?
I'll second it.
Second. Moved by Jeniak, seconded by Mrs. Smith. And we're going to move all A, B, and C. I'm just going to read the names.
Correct. Up to you.
I'm just going to read for firefighters. It would be John Rakios, Nicholas Leasco Jr., and Mario LaFregoria. I'm sorry?
Forgia.
Forgia? I'm sorry, thank you. ENS would be Nicholas Leasco Jr. and Mario LaFloria, and Gina Viasis? Yeah, sorry on that. I apologize tenfold. And for the Financial Review Board, I have Mr. Dio, who's going to fill the unexpired 3-year term, and I'm going to have Mr. Mark Schiffer to fill the unexpired 4-year term ending on 12/31/2021. Motion and second, please. Do I have to make a motion just to call it all at once and then make a motion for that? Okay. So then we can just do a roll call.
Councilmember Quinn?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedlander?
Yes.
Councilmember Jednak?
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Vice President Abrahamson?
Yes.
President Kelly?
Yes. 9 yeses, motion carries. We have old business. I don't know if anybody has any old business they want to bring up. Nobody? I have just one quick thing that I wanted to address. Mrs. Ferrante, if you recall, I had sent an email to the mayor requesting a report with regard to 28 Crescent Ridge.
That matters in
And I did that
in litigation. I just want you to know.
And I did that under 4069A 37.1. It's the second paragraph of that. And at any council member at any time require a report of any aspect of the government and municipality by making a written request to the mayor. I had done that. I haven't received any response to that. Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. And I was just wondering if there's been a report completed and when would I expect it to be delivered?
There will be no report. It's a subject of litigation. Once the litigation is over with, we'll speak about it.
This was something that was created prior to any litigation, so it wouldn't be...
Doesn't matter. We're not going to be speaking about it tonight. Well, you're not going to get an answer tonight.
Okay. You refuse to give me an answer on my legislative powers on that? Mr. Puzio? Mayor Puzio?
You have my answer.
Okay. That's it for...
Council President, since you have under old business reports that have been requested and unfulfilled, I made a request in writing to the mayor on February 21st at 3:12 p.m. by email, written request pursuant to NJSA 40:69A-37.1 regarding the outage of the township's website. To date, I still have not received that report.
It was a technical glitch. That's my report. Town site is up and running.
So my request for the report is as follows. Regarding the outage, the underlying causes, any corrective actions taken, and any preventative measures taken to prevent future such outages. What you just described does not answer those items.
We have an IT department. The website was down for about how long?
Maybe 20 minutes?
Maybe 20 minutes.
At the most.
The town website was down for 20 minutes. Our IT department handled it, and that's my report.
And what were the corrective actions taken?
I don't have a report to give you tonight, sir.
Thank you.
sorry, one more thing.
Like, we have time to get the board working on budgets, doing all this other on simple matters. We have time to do that. I'm not going to waste the administration's time. Are you guys done? No, we'll discuss this. Can we carry the new business, the discussion of O-1907 and O-1908 to the next meeting? It's getting late. It's getting late.
You know what? No. What I'm going to do now is actually, I'm going to make a motion, Mr. Fuzio, Mayor Fuzio. I've been requested by the clerk to provide means for legal defense with regard to the litigation known as Schmidt versus Rockaway Township and Christina Clipperton as the acting municipal clerk, and that docket number is MRSL 2535-18. So my motion, based on that request, is to approve the acting clerk's request for means of legal defense and legal representation and any cross-claims, counterclaims, and appeals arising from the litigation entitled Schmidt versus Rockaway Township and Christina Clipperton, docket number MRS-L-002535-18. And this will allow payment for her selected counsel. And in addition to that, the rate for the attorney is going to be reduced as it was negotiated from $250 to $165 an hour for legal services for Damiano Fracasso, Esquire. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Abrahamson. Clerk, please make a discussion. Any discussion? Sure.
I just want to ask our township attorney, is based on your interpretation of the suit.
He's conflicted out, Mr.
I'm asking opinion of attorney.
It's not appropriate. Out in the matter.
I'm asking opinion of attorney. I'm not
The
asking.
same guy that you voted to remove from the matter.
Right.
You're okay.
So, have you read the suit?
Yes.
Okay. Is she being sued individually or as a township clerk?
My perception of the suit, and by the way, in response to the conflict claims, okay, I'm not involved in that litigation.
Could you talk in the microphone, Mr. Ashford?
I thought I was. That's what this is, isn't it, Mr. Kelly?
Closer.
I'm 3 inches from it.
It's too far.
We don't have
We
red.
don't have that. They're always
No. There you go.
Okay. Let's distinguish the conflict issue. You are asking me a question about the abilities and powers of this council, okay, as distinct from providing advice or opinion.
The question was if the clerk actually is being sued individually as her capacity or as an acting clerk.
My impression of the lawsuit is that the clerk has been sued in her official capacity as records custodian.
Could you please speak again? I cannot hear him.
His opinion is that she's being sued in her official capacity as township clerk.
And more particularly as records custodian.
Records custodian.
Since that's a dedicated function pertaining to Oprah.
Thank you, Mr. Chiafona. Any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Quinn?
No.
Councilmember Friedlander?
No.
Councilmember Judenak?
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett?
No.
Councilmember Jackson?
No.
Vice President Abrahamson?
Yes.
President Kelly?
Yes. 5 yeses, 4 noes, motion carries. I have another motion. I have a motion to appoint the law firm of Derringer and Associates pursuant to Township Code 2-7.2 to represent and defend the Township Council and Council President Kelly for cross-claims, counterclaims, and appeals arising from the litigation entitled Puzio versus Rockaway Township Council, docket number MRS-L-378-19, at an hourly rate of $165 an hour and to not exceed $20,000, not to exceed $17,500 with all necessary related procurement paperwork to be processed by the administration. Do I have a second?
Second. Council President.
Yes, Mr. Quinn.
Yes. I would like to have the minority council segregated from that because we do not agree with the agreement. We didn't see this lawyer. We didn't interview him. And we don't agree with...
When you say we, when you say we, Mr. Quinn, have you already had this conversation with other members?
The minority.
You were talking about Rockaway business with other council members? Mr. Quinn?
President Kelly, I am speaking on behalf of myself.
Okay.
I am looking for the minority to join me in getting that old attorney.
So you're going to, would it be...
I don't believe this attorney will do anything in our best interest. You've already had a conversation with him, and evidently your group has.
No.
Council President, we have a motion. We have a motion before.
We have a motion, Mr. Quinn.
If Councilmember Quinn wants to make another motion after this one, he has the ability to do that.
And you could always conflict yourself out, Mr. Quinn. I mean, you've actually entertained the lawsuit with Mr. Puzio that you've actually had some written documentation stating the same. So you may even just be conflicted out. So I don't know if it would even be any wasted effort on your behalf from what you've posted. So I understand your concerns. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't understand what you're talking about.
Okay.
Go ahead. Let's go.
Okay. Any other discussion? No.
Council President Kelly.
Yes.
For the record, I have not spoken to any of these gentlemen. I know each one by the what that was served upon me, and I thank you for doing this ability.
Mr. Quinn, are you still there?
I'm here.
Yeah. Did you ever reach out to the town attorney, Mr. Yatrafano, regarding this matter?
My question to you, when did you reach out to this attorney, and what committee was formed from the council to represent this group?
Well, we have an attorney review committee that was created a while ago, as you recall. I believe Mr. Jackson would be conflicted out because the mayor hired his wife in the administration for his department. It's your wife. She works for the mayor. Okay. If you feel you're not in conflict, that's fine. But we selected the individual that we have here, and then moving forward, myself, Mr. Jackson. And if you don't want to be part of that representation, you don't have to. So with that being said, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Quinn?
No.
Councilmember Friedlander?
No.
Councilmember Jedinak?
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett?
No.
Councilmember Jackson?
No.
Vice President Abrahamson?
Yes.
President Kelly?
Yes. We have 4 noes, 5 yeses.
Council President, I probably should have made this comment during the discussion portion, but the public needs to know that the council has been served with a lawsuit by the mayor. We have an order to show cause. We have to be in court with representation sometime soon. That's how orders to show cause work. So thank you, Council President Kelly, for identifying an attorney to represent the interests of the taxpayers of Rockaway Township and the council. Thank you.
With that being said, I'm going to move the agenda real quick.
Wait, we want to make a second motion.
Mr. President, I asked for a motion for the minority to hire their own counsel.
Well, do you have a member of the council that you want to do with the rate and everything else, Mr. Quinn?
I'll second it.
No, I don't. We
Okay.
have to put together a committee.
Well, when you do that, then bring it before the council and we'll vote on it. For that being said, I'm going to move the meeting now to closed session. I'm going to
Mr.
have
Council President.
Closed session A,
Mr. Council President.
R19-49, resolution authorizing.
Mr. Council President.
I'm in the middle of reading.
Well, I was trying to get you before you started reading.
All right.
Why aren't you allowing the motion?
What motion? He doesn't have a motion for representation.
Yeah, then I'll make a motion.
What's your hourly rate and representation in a firm?
Don't have to have one right now.
Excuse me, can I say something?
Sure.
You're denying representation for the council, so now you want to have two representations for the council to pay two attorneys for a lawsuit that was filed against us at the taxpayer's dime.
That's right.
Oh,
We're still entitled to attorneys too, just like you. If we don't agree with you,
You
I'm not going to be, I don't want an attorney
attorney,
to defend
Mr.
me.
Freelander.
Under 272, the ordinance, you can do that.
Okay, we'll do it the
There's
next
nothing
time.
that you have, but I mean, I can see if you had an attorney selected, you had an hourly rate, you had a firm, you don't even know the docket number, you probably even haven't read the complaint, and then you want to have an attorney.
You know what?
Can I move forward?
Yes, we all got copies
You
of
want
it.
the complaint? We sometimes have read it.
We all got copies.
And you haven't got
Don't
you
tell
haven't got
me
your
about
attorney?
complaints.
Have you reached out to council?
Just read for closed session. Hi to you too.
I want to amend closed session, resolution R19, -49, is resolution authorizing the executive closed session in accordance with the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act, NJSA 10:4.6, ET sequel, to discuss potential anticipated litigation known as MRS-L-0378-19, Maripuzio versus Rockaway Township and Council President Tucker Kelly. I anticipate it to be 30 minutes or less. I anticipate the records to be, I'm in the middle of reading a motion.
Wait, can we say one
No.
thing before
No.
we close session?
We're out then, if they're not gonna let you talk, we're done. We're done.
Have you finished?
We're done.
I seconded that motion.
I just wanted to finish it so we were clear that the records would be anticipated to be open to the public within 120 days. Do I have a second for that?
You have a second.
By Jenny.
Councilmember Quinn? Mr. Quinn, this is to amend.
It's okay.
Councilmember Friedlander?
Yes.
Councilmember Jednak?
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett?
Going into closed session regarding the litigation. Yes.
To amend it.
Yes.
It was to amend the
To amend the
resolution.
I'm sorry, you amend the resolution.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Vice President Abrahamson? President Kelly?
Yes.
Now we need to.
Go into closed session.
Yeah.
Right?
Council President, I'll move the amended closed session resolution.
I second it.
Councilmember Quinn? To go
The amended-
into.
Where's the amended resolution?
I'm sorry, Councilmember Quinn? Councilmember Friedlander?
Yes.
Councilmember Jednak?
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Sackett?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Vice President Abrahamson? President Kelly?
Yes. 9 yeses, motion carries.
Go to recess to go into closed.
We can go into the, no, we're gonna go in the other room, I think it'd be easier.
So we have to just say that we're recessing to go over.
We're gonna recess to go into the, prosecutor's conference room.
Why are we doing that?
Council President, it appears that Council members Sackett and Jackson have not returned from closed session. I'm sorry, returned to the open session. Mr. Freelander has joined us. And Council President, in the interest of time, I'd like to take items A and B under new business, which we skipped over, to deal with other business. The two ordinance drafts, if we could please have them deferred to the next meeting as old business on the agenda.
We can do that. Do you need to make a vote on that?
No, they were only on for discussion anyway, so they weren't on for a vote anyway.
So we'll put that on for old business.
Yeah. 312. Yeah. I do have one other item, though, if I may.
Go ahead.
Back in 2017, the council passed Resolution R17-157 and R-17-158. 157 appointed a qualified purchasing agent for the township, which is what many towns are doing. And 158 is a resolution that increases the bid threshold, which you can only do once you have a qualified purchasing agent in place. So if you have a QPA, you can increase your bid threshold from what would otherwise be $17,500 up to $40,000. Yes, and in fact, there's a local finance notice. I have a copy of it with me. It's local finance notice 2015-18, dated September 18, 2015, which states the bid threshold, local purchasing unit that doesn't have a QPA is at $17,500. Those that have a QPA meet some other standards can increase it to $29,000 or then to $40,000, which is the top. Can. In fact, page 1 of this local finance notice says contracting units still have the option to set their bid thresholds at a lower amount. Page 2 then has the table with the thresholds and goes on to immediately say, please note that the political contribution threshold pay to play of $17,500 remains in place. All procurements over $17,500, unless in the agency's new higher bid threshold, window contracts are subject to those laws. So the reason I raise this is that I would like to make the following motion. To rescind Resolution R-17-158 and to reduce the Rockaway Township bid threshold accordingly to $17,500, and to direct the clerk's office to send a letter with a copy of this motion to the Director of the Division of Local Government Services to inform them of same. And the reason I ask for that motion is, it concerns me that there are items of spending that are going on that we're not aware of, and that threshold between $17,500 and $40,000, there are contracts that are in there, including the contract that for apparently this attorney that the mayor says he's hired, that are above that threshold. And I think that there's spending going on that we're not aware of, and I think that we should reduce the threshold to $17,500 so that the council can be aware of that. We hadn't gotten a budget, as the code states, by the January 15th deadline, and we ended up today, unbeknownst to us, showing up and finding suddenly a budget book. And I don't know if any other council members knew that it was arriving today. I didn't see any emails about it when I walked in. We didn't have the opportunity to even schedule a presentation for this tonight. So I'm concerned that we don't have the ability to take a close look at spending that's ongoing and unbeknownst to us. And for that reason, I make that motion.
So are you doing two motions, or are you doing
It's one single motion, Council President.
Do we need to do two?
No, it's one single motion to rescind the resolution. It's a compound motion to rescind Resolution R-17-158 and to reduce the Rockaway Township bid threshold accordingly to $17,500, and to direct the clerk's office to send a letter with a copy of this motion to the Director of Division of Local Government Services to inform them of same. And the reason I asked for that last item is that the original resolution, R-17158, included in its body such a letter informing the DLGS about it. So if we're rescinding it, we should send them a letter accordingly as well.
Do you have that down? Do you need that, a copy of what?
The motion was to
Here.
rescind
There it is.
resolution.
You
Thank you.
can keep that. It's my handwritten motion.
I'll email you if I can't make it out.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Freelander, do you have any questions?
Don't you think we should get a little bit more information before we start doing something like this?
Well, the whole point is to get information. That's what this will do. This will give us information we don't have today.
Oh, yeah. I don't think so.
If I could ask a question, when you're done.
Go ahead, Mrs. Abrahamson.
Sorry, done that. So it's basically just to put a number on spending, and just so that we can be informed of any spending that would exceed that number. Is that how I'm understanding?
Council Vice President, so the current threshold because of R-17158 is 40,000.
Yeah.
Anything under 40,000 we don't currently see.
Yeah.
The local finance notice and the rescinding of that resolution will reduce that threshold to 17.5 so that we will see all the things that we are not currently seeing down to that 17.5.
Right, that's okay. So now we'll have more knowledge of what's being spent if it gets to that 17.5.
Yes, we will see anything over 17.5 rather than seeing things
Okay, I
only over 40.
understand.
Thank you.
Mr. Freelander, do you have any more questions from that? In other words,
I understand. You want to reduce the threshold from $40,000 to $17,500.
but for the reason
Plain and
being,
simple. I understand the reason.
what are the reasons?
Don't ask me questions. What are the reasons? I understand
Okay.
what you're doing.
Just making sure you're clear.
No, I'm perfectly
When we
clear
walk away,
what's
you
going
can
on.
say I didn't understand it or whatever have you.
No, I understand. Don't worry about it.
Okay, yeah.
So, Council President, I made that motion.
I'll second it, Jeremy. I think that's a bad thing.
Motion made by Jeniak, second by Abrahamson.
I think it's responsible, actually.
Any discussion on it at all? None? Mr. Freelander, one more time? No? Mr. Palumbo?
Perfectly
Mrs. Smith?
No, I
clear.
understand.
Okay. Clerk, please do the roll.
Councilmember Friedlander?
No.
Councilmember Jedinak?
Yes.
Councilmember Palumbo?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Vice President Abrahamson?
Yes.
President Kelly?
Yes. That would be 1 no, 5 yeses, motion carries. Do you have the address for her to,
I don't, but
okay. Is there anything else?
Council President, given the late time, perhaps we can suspend reports.
Mr. Freelander, how do you feel?
Perfectly fine with it.
To adjourn?
With what it, yeah.
Okay.
I make a motion to adjourn. How's that?
I'll second that.
Well, since he's talking to me, I might as well say it.
Yeah.
He wants me to say it.
It's
so.
12:35 too, so,
Yeah.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 That's 6 yeses. Motion adjourned. Sorry.
I know, I jumped too.